towards Chicana, which unfortunately is a bit of a dead zone from signal from us, so we're not going to be spending too much time looking for them this morning, but we'll try to see if we can find the little princess. We had her for so short yesterday that I'm hoping I can pick her up on the road this morning somewhere, milling about, or maybe she was successful and managed to find herself a meal. That first prize. It's going to be tricky though. The road is so flooded. Her tracks in places are really good, and then in other places are just existent, where she's basically walked through water. I'm trying to see if I can actually see her tracks here. I don't see anything that splashed through here. There are some that are exiting. Yeah, she went to the side. Now that I've just washed her track away with this mud, wonderful. But she did go here. There's also a hyena following her, so I'll just try and kind of pick up the hyena tracks more than her tracks, because the hyenas are much heavier, so they're leaving a much deeper imprint than she is. So if we just follow their tracks, that'll help us in just seeing where she's gone. I'm pretty sure they're going to follow her for a while. It's quite a common thing to see early in the morning, is hyena tracks on the top of the leopard track as they go along. And we know that this is probably in all likelihood a track from early last night. She was on a bit of a mission when I left her. She was just walking pretty steadily northwards. So this must be around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock last night, if she got a bit waylaid with things, but I'd imagine around 8-ish. So it's a long way that she could have traveled, and we know with Kalamba, she covers huge amounts of distance. If something doesn't get her attention and she doesn't successful with the kill, I'm just hoping that she eventually found something to hunt and we can find the carcass up in a tree or something like that. Otherwise, we're going to be in for a long morning of looking for tracks. And the problem is that where these go, eventually it's going to be really tricky to start tracking. The road gets very hard in places. It's going to make life a little bit difficult. That was unacceptable, fly. Go away. Fly just flew into my ear and out again. I feel like you get violated when a fly flies into your ear like that. Not pleasant at all. Feels like they're kind of like burrowing in, and who knows what they've been sitting on prior to going into your ear. Not the nicest feeling. Anyway, hopefully we'll have some luck with these tracks. In the meantime, though, let's send you across to Tess to say good morning. Sorry about that, everybody. You're back with us with our termite mound bound Impala. We just thought we'd spend a little while longer here because it's just so gorgeous. Such a pretty way to start the morning. And I mentioned earlier about how relaxed they're looking. Now, Impala normally, I find, between half an hour, 45 minutes after they've seen some form of danger, they're still a little bit jumpy. But it's been a long time. It's been 11 hours or 10 hours, whatever it was. 7:30 last night. 10 hours. So they have calmed down, although they are looking at something. Well, those are not. Females to the right are looking at something. Now they're alarm calling. Let's go have a look. What is it that you see? I'm going to move forward. These females on the right-hand side of the mound are looking directly in front of us. Now, there are many things that scare Impala. There's a very half-hearted, there we go. It's a spotted hyena. So, things moving along that are quite low down will often give our Impala cause for alarm. Hello? Who are you?
Looks like one of the youngsters, I'm not sure. It's not one of the youngsters. It's walking straight towards the impala. What are you going to do? Are you going to hunt one of them? All on your own? So now this one's probably tracking Tlalamba, who is going to move back so we can get another view. Probably tracking Tlalamba, because Tlalamba walked straight here last night. And it's probably thinking to itself, can I find her with my nose? There we go, she's busy smelling again. Back onto the road. And as the hyena goes, you'll see the alert attentiveness of all the impalas there. They are all standing very rigid on the Termite Mound now, trying to figure out what is this low moving thing in the grass, and they know to themselves it's a hyena. But their alertness is still worthwhile. Now they're looking elsewhere. Now, although Tristan's got tracks of Tlalamba heading north, doesn't mean she's actually continued. In all likelihood, she could have come back, or another. Because this hyena seems to be trailing somebody, and as I said, Tlalamba walked here a very long time ago. So it's quite helpful. Hyena and impala, very helpful for finding spotted cats in the early morning. It isn't Tima. Thanks, everybody. I had a feeling it was, but she doesn't seem to have the same. She's in much better condition than last I saw her. Last time I saw Tima, it was Ribbon's daughter. She had a pretty poor condition on her back hind quarters. She seems to have recovered. I suppose when you are the daughter of the current queen, you get a little bit more status and you don't get beaten up as much. Okay, so that hyena is trailing, nose to the ground. Quite a few hours behind, but there's a very good chance that she might be able to track down Tlalamba if she carries on. But it's a very good morning to you from Djuma, and a very good morning to you as well from Anbion and Ngala.
Good morning and welcome to a beautiful Anbion Ngala. You can see the river is still flowing, which is unbelievable. The banks are starting to show a little bit more, which means the stream is slowing a little bit. But it is an absolutely stunning morning, and we can see the sunrise properly for the first time in days, throwing a beautiful golden light on everything this morning. My name is Tessa. I'm going to be your guide on safari this morning here at Anbion Ngala. Behind the camera we have Sebastian, and this morning we are really enjoying all of the beautiful bird sounds that we can hear. It's the dawn chorus still happening, and it's all along the banks of the river where all of these beautiful green trees are. So I actually came down to this stretch of the river because this is the stretch where the Birmingham lioness has her 3 cubs. We did actually manage to get a glimpse of her on the way down here this morning, but she has gone into the den site. She has moved the cubs a little bit further north and further up the bank away from the river. And so we're just waiting patiently for her to come out. When it gets a little bit warmer, the cubs might come out and play. What's also really exciting for us this morning is we know that we have some of the Birmingham Pride that crossed our boundary last night back into and beyond Ngala. So I think we are in store for a very beautiful day here. I'm very excited to see what happens as we start heating up again. That being said, we are actually expecting some rain here from around lunchtime again. What's most exciting to me is that this river is still flowing. So it's something that I really enjoyed doing yesterday, was actually heading down the bank and sticking my toes in the water just to say that I've done it, and I could hear it and I could feel it. And you can see how stunning it really is. We've got a lot of tracks of elephants, some very, very fresh signs along the banks of the river. That lioness, when we came into this area, was actually walking down towards the water, and then she came back up. But there you can see all the fresh elephant tracks. And I think they've been here literally within the last half hour. It has been so fresh. I think we just missed them arriving here. But the nice thing is, knowing that we saw that Birmingham lioness, we know that if we're patient and we keep checking here, that she might actually come out. And in fact, the first place that we saw these cubs was just around that bend of the river that you can see there. But I think what I'm going to do, we're going to spend a little bit more time here and hope that that lioness comes out. And in the meantime, I'll send you over to Tswalu to say hello.
Dumela Wamachetso Matswalu. Good morning and welcome to Tswalu. A very windy morning it is, and we have just entered this beautiful little pan to see how much water came down here. Folks, good morning. My name is Carl and behind camera is Craig, and thank you so much for joining us on this wonderful live and interactive safari. We had a lot of rain in the night before last, and just to show you, this is the same pan that we were observing the little grebe. This is the same pan that we have the little blacksmith lapwing chicks. Look how much water there is. It is unbelievable. It is basically filled to the brim, and it is a super windy morning. You can see the waves. I'm going to take out my surfboard this morning, and I'm going to catch one or two of these left-handers. There's a nice barrel going as well. But there is a lot of water, and myself and Craig have decided we are just going to go further south to see how much damage has been made from the water that fell here on Tswalu. So the 26th, the water started at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it did not stop. Right through the night, right until the morning of the 27th. It only stopped at about 10 o'clock yesterday. But we can't be complaining about this beautiful resource touching the land. And through the night of the 26th, as soon as night fell, every hour it just seemed to get harder and harder and harder. It kept me up about until 1 o'clock. Where we had a little visitor in our house, a little small spotted genet, decided he needed a bit of shelter, and our house was the humble abode that he chose. But how amazing is this? So we're going to be going a little bit further south along this mountain range over here, the beautiful Karonderberg. Marianne, yes, I'm going to take out my windboard today, and I'm going to basically utilize this massive body of water to enjoy a little bit of water sports. There are certain parts of Tswalu where we received over 200 millimeters of rain. At the Guides village where we stay and reside, we received about 150 mils. So it is a lot of water that came down. And we are very, very, very thankful for this stuff. So a lot of damage would have been done to roads. There are certain staff members that had to be air-vacked yesterday from their residence because there was no way for them to get out. And their houses are flooded. So Tswalu had to start up the chopper and actually go and fetch them. And now they are residing at the kraal, where they are safe and sound, and we will obviously take account and see what we can do to those areas, and then also the roads. There's going to be a lot of repairs that need to be done. But this is what it was all about. Managing and understanding all of this and having the tools necessary is very important. First and foremost for people to be safe, and then also so that you can manage this in a very strong manner. Because when you have rain like this, there's not much you can do but just hold on and wait until it stops and then take account. But incredible. We normally cross this road. Look in front of you, Craig. We normally cross this little drainage line. Look at the water that is just totally encasing the road. It is amazing. So further down south is where we're going to go, and then from there I think we're going to shoot into the dunes and find a little bit of shelter. But for now we're going to send you off.
How wonderful to hear that Tswalu has had so much beautiful rain. It's incredible how much we have all gotten in the last week. It's really changed everything. But we're sitting here in the riverbed of Anbion Ngala, hoping the lioness makes her appearance later on. But have a listen to all of the birds around us. There's black-headed orioles calling, woodland kingfishers, a whole lot of different dove species. It's absolutely beautiful. It's absolutely mind-blowing how much life has actually exploded after this rain. I feel like the birds are louder and there's more of them. I actually hadn't heard a red-chested cuckoo in quite a while, and we've been hearing them since yesterday again. Dung beetles had been gone. Now the dung beetles are back. It's unbelievable. And you can see it's very peaceful along the stretch of the river. Just a nice, slow stream of water flowing. What a beautiful morning to be sitting here, and the best place to look for a Birmingham lioness in the morning.
I'm normally very, very excited for elephant roadblocks, but today I'm not so much, because we've trying to track this leopard, but it's proving to be impossible. Well, not this leopard, actually, it's a different leopard now. We've picked up very, very, very fresh tracks for Tingana. I think it's Tingana, it should be him. But they are from now. But the problem is that we just keep bumping into elephant after elephant, and they have now walked the entire road. And you can see he keeps going off the road to go around these alleys and coming back to the road. But this is now the third group of elephants on the tracks that we're following that are destroying his tracks. So it's just becoming harder and harder, but we can smell fresh scent mark. We can see very, very fresh tracks. So maybe he's here somewhere and he's just trying to get around all these alleys, like we are in many ways. The problem is these guys' feet just obliterate whatever it is, and eventually he's going to turn off. And if it's in an area where they've walked, I'm not going to be able to tell where he's gone. Tlalamba also turned off somewhere, but like I say again, Ellies have literally just walked everywhere, so it's impossible to actually see you kind of get these tracks in between all these fresh elephant tracks when you've got herds like this just roaming about, lots of big bulls as well. So we're just going to have to hope for the best. It's going to be quite tricky to track when you've got this amount of elephants moving around in the area. They definitely are wanting to walk on roads more than the bush as well because of how wet and muddy it is, and that's making tracking quite tricky. It's okay though. Still nice to see these guys, and maybe us just being appreciative of them and sitting and waiting will lead us to what we're looking for. His track is right behind me though, so there was still a track heading in this direction. So I think what's probably happened now is he's had to go off because of these guys always cut down the road to the side here. I would be surprised if he's gone that way because his general direction has been north the whole time, and that would be a 90-degree or 180-degree turn heading back south again. So I don't think he will go there. I think he's going to go in the pathway where this bull Ellie is, and we're just going to have to try and see if he pops out again on the other side. The other issue is that he's heading deeper and deeper into Buffelshoek and towards a dead zone for our signal, which is also not great. Hopefully, though, we'll catch him before he gets anywhere near there. It's a interesting kind of track because little Tlalamba's track was kind of moving in the same direction. All of a sudden hers is turned, so I don't know if she maybe saw him or something like that. It's possible that could be the case. All right, our Ellies have parted ways. Let's check if we can find where he went. There's still lots of hyena tracks on the road here. They've also been milling about, but I don't see his track anymore. Ellies, you guys have made life difficult. All right, let's just try to get through this section and past where these Ellies have been, and let's hope that what's happened is in the meantime he's kind of gone through. He could have gone down towards Tambuti Dam and the cut line again. I mean, I suppose it's possible, but I'm trying to hedge my bet that he's just carried on this road and walked his way up towards our main sort of radio tower that we call Long Pole. That's what I'm thinking he's done. Ellies, you really have walked all over the road, haven't you? All right. Just trying to think what we're going to do here. Let's drive this road, and if nothing, then we'll loop back around. But the reason why I say the track is fresh, when you get fresh tracks when it's rained like this, the surface of the road is a certain color, but when an animal walks there, what it does is it disturbs that, and the wet sand is sticking to their feet, and as they walk they take that wet sand and they plonk it a little bit further ahead, and what that causes is the tracks to go much darker than the surface of the soil, and what we were seeing with that leopard track is that it was exactly that, is that the leopard track was dark on the surface of the soil, wet. We found where he scent marked, and we could see it was still wet. It hadn't soaked into the road yet, which I know the roads are saturated, but that normally gives you an idea of how fresh they are. It looks exactly like what we're seeing with these elephant tracks. That's how the leopard track looks as well. So he's here somewhere. We can smell strong scent marks as we're driving all the time, and hopefully we'll be able to pick him up. It's just this road is now just one big elephant footprint. This whole herd that we've just seen has walked all over this. Of course they have. As if it's not difficult enough to be tracking leopards in these conditions, we now have our Ellie friends making a bit of a mess as well. I wonder if he didn't just decide to go because of all the elephant presence. He did do a 180 and just turn. Possible. Let's just check this junction here, see if he didn't come this way and maybe... Anna Marie is saying the Ellies have been very happy lately with all the marulas. They have, haven't they? There's more elephants in front here. All right. No, that's an Ellie track. Okay, I'm going to go around these guys and just check if he didn't come up this way. Ellies? Really? Of all the roads, it would be this one, of course. All right, so keep looking here. It smells like that leopard scent mark again. Here we go. Here's fresh tracks again now on top of the Ellie tracks, but coming the opposite way. All right, let me just scratch around here. Maybe he's sitting somewhere here. He just got turned by the Ellies. Although this looks like it could be two leopards together. If you look, I'm just trying to see nicely. No, it's just the one. If you look here on the right-hand side of the road, you're going to see a very clear set of tracks now coming the opposite way down the road and past us. So let's go and see where those have now gone. They're on top of all the elephant kind of nonsense in this area. So hopefully we'll find them. In the meantime, let's send you over to Steve.
Well, if anyone can find leopards, it's Mr. Tristan. We happen to be on a road called Ingwe Alley. Leopard Alley. Ingwe Alley sounds cooler, doesn't it? Theo got me just now. I said, is this Ingwe? Oh, go away, birds. Yes. Okay, so we might do a little bit of birding this morning. We had a track just now, what looked like a male leopard, but then I really went in and observed it, and Tristan can also probably share with you the frustrations that this one animal has. There is one hyena that walks around on this property that's got 3 lobes on the back of his foot. Now, hyenas in general have 2 lobes on the back, but there's one hyena with the right front foot that's got 3 lobes. When we look closely enough and you assess and analyze the track more, you'll find out that it is indeed a hyena. But right now, we've stopped to do a spot of birding. There's go-away birds, previously known as the grey lory. Many South Africans that I know are very upset that they're not called lories anymore. And that's okay, everybody. You can still call them lories. No one is going to judge you. No one really minds. If someone does mind, well, really, that's their problem. Bird changes and names. As long as you can identify a bird, you know who they are, that's all good. Change the name. Many of you might be wondering, but what on earth are you talking about, the name changes? And now we have discussed this at length in the past. And there's a bit of a uniformity globally with regards to birding. Birding is the #1 growing passive hobby in the world. And there are many, many people doing it. The reason I say it's passive is because you go into areas, generally by foot or by vehicle, and a very low sort of impact to view birds. So it brings lots of money in for tourism, for conservation, and the amounts of money people spend on the gear, the books and the telescopes and all of that is quite a lot. So there's been a uniformity, collaboration in the naming of birds, and so many Europeans were coming to South Africa to see the Hughlings robin, for example, but they found out that it was a bird they'd seen before, but we just named it differently. So common names are often a change. But some birds have been renamed due to the fact that they either have changed slightly or they lack a certain element. And all of the lories, the old lories, have been renamed turacos, and that is due to the fact that they have 2 types of coloration or pigments in their feathers, one being the green, Turaco verdin, and one being the red, Turasin. I forget which one is the green and the red. I sometimes get that mixed up. But if you look at the old world lories, apart from the grey lory, they've all got the green and the red pigment. So Turaco verdin, Turasin. So they've now called those old lories turacos, which makes a lot of sense. And grey go-away birds, oh, we've got some spurfowl in the road. And grey go-away birds do not have any of that pigment. They are grey, and there are a couple other go-away birds in Africa, and so now there are 3 of them paired together in the go-away bird family. And they make the noise, kwai. The Afrikaans name is very relevant. They call them kwe kwe fool. Kwe kwe kwe, because that's the noise they make. And now, here is actually a francolin, not a spurfowl. This is the crested francolin. And many, many people also call the others, the spurfowls, I call them francolin and a tail francolin, and that's okay. If you still call it a francolin, I'm not going to mind. but they have named many of the larger Franklins spur fowls due to the size and due to the fact that the males have spurs anyway. Spur is the little element or the fighting tool on the back of the foot. But very camouflaged. The crested Franklin, easily identified against the Natal spur phalacha by the dark beak. Very camouflaged. Dark beak and that white line on the back of the head called the supercilium. And you see the little chicks. So that's probably the second brood that this little Franklin family's had. Little covey of Franklins. And they might even breed again because the vegetation is suitable. So you find that even later in the season, because Franklins and spurfowl rely on the vegetation for cover. And if there's food and cover, why not breed again? We've all heard the term make hay while the sun shines. Well, birds like this say make babies while the vegetation is adequate. It doesn't have the same ring to it, does it? No. There we go. There's the little chickies. Let's see how they're going to do here in the wet. Well, they're going to manage to get across. Now, they're called the crested Franklin because when they get agitated, that black cap on the top of the head actually stands up. You don't see it very often, but they need to get agitated to do so. And when the cap stands up, their tail also stands quite erect, and they look rather funny. Now they're trying to think, oh goodness, where did this water come from? Yes, everybody, it's been raining. Now you can see that's the male on the left. You see he's got that spur on the back of his leg, and then there's another one on the far right. So there's two males here, and then the one in the front picture's a female. And some little youngsters that are trying to think, what on earth are we going to do? It's so wet. Now, they give birth to precocial chicks. Most ground nesting birds will lay a number of eggs in a nest and only start incubating once the eggs have all been laid. And incubation then leads to synchronistic hatching, which means all the chicks hatch at the same time. And in precocial chicks, they're all quite well developed. They're called downies because they're covered in down to protect them from the sun. And they're able to then move pretty soon after being hatched and follow mum and dad around and then feed for themselves. There's no parental care with regards to feeding. The parents obviously look out for them from a watchful point of view and a guidance, but they don't provide them with any food. So these birds can afford to lay large eggs and also have larger broods because there's no parental care required. Whereas other birds that have nests in trees and hatch nestlings, which are tiny naked birds, can only afford to feed so many. So their clutch size will be very determined by the availability of food and also on the availability or the ability of the parents to provide them with that food. You can't go and have 15 little nestlings if the parents can only provide for 2 or 3. Hence, in the form of doves and pigeons that only ever have 2, because they produce a very special form of food for their chicks called pigeon milk, so they can't have more than 2. And in most nests in the tree we call altricial. Those eggs are generally, incubation starts from the day of the first egg being laid, and you get asynchronistic hatching, which means that the eggs hatch one after the other. So there's normally a day separating each laying. It takes about a day for an egg to be produced and then laid. And then if the incubation starts from first laying, you're going to get a chick hatching consecutively before each other. And what that leads to is competition. And the first chicks hatching, 1 or 2, will always be stronger and more physically fit than the chick that hatches last. And that is basically a strategy for survival. If in very, very good conditions, all 3 chicks or all 4 chicks might survive. But when conditions are low or poor, maybe only one will survive at the expense of the others. And it's just a natural strategy of survival of the fittest. It's okay. You can get your feet wet, everybody. Region, they are. They are in very similar sort of relations. They're not exactly the same. There's some differences between them. I couldn't really tell you the differences too greatly, but they're ground nesting birds. They're also regarded as game birds. I don't think quails fall under the same family, though. I think it might be a different family or order, but I'm not certain. We do get a couple of quails here. We get the Carachain, Hottentot, button quail, and the common quail. And they have very similar behaviors, but they're very, very well hidden in their vegetation. Very, very well hidden. But also ground nesting birds. They lay all the eggs, and then incubation starts. We've got some woodpeckers, kingfishers up there. Oh, so black-collared barbet below the brown-hooded kingfisher, just over here. Dan, have you? I mean, there's the just below. That's the brown-hooded kingfisher. Oh, hang on, up. There we go. There's a black-collared barbet. We heard him calling before. Black-collared barbet. Dan, how they fight is that they basically run along on their legs and they jump up and hit each other. And there's a hornbill. They jump up and hit each other with the back of their legs. If you've ever seen chickens or roosters fighting, it's very much like that. That's how all members of that sort of family fight. They sort of rear up and they use the back of their leg for hitting each other. And often you see feathers go flying in all different directions. It's a male-on-male sort of battle. How wonderful. What a little species trio. Oh, there's two black-collared barbets there. There's one to the right of the hornbill, just hidden there. You can just see its back. And then, so two adults. Black-collared barbets are cavity nesting. So is the hornbill. And so these would both be two examples of chicks that get laid. And asynchronistic hatching, so we'll get more success when conditions are good. Like a year like this, hornbills will probably successfully rear 3 chicks, whereas when conditions are not so great. Turn your attention again to The Queen of Trees, a documentary I've recommended before. It's freely available, and that gives you very good insight into a family of grey hornbills living in a sycamore fig. Oh, there is the brown-hooded kingfisher. Now, the brown-hooded kingfisher does not live in a cavity in the tree like its woodland counterpart. It lives in the bank of a river. Quite easy to remember because it's got a dirty head. The dirty head, I think that's a grey. Look, brown-hooded. Let's have a look. Pretty sure it's a brown-hooded. They almost completely out-compete this time of year. You don't hear them as much. The woodland kingfishers arrive and are very vociferous in these parts. Yeah, he's actually just in the gap on the left now. He's actually doing a little bit of a display. And there's 2 of them. They're just in and up a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Left and up. Yeah, there's 2 of them. One above. There's one there, and then one above him as well. There's the brown-hooded kingfisher. Little streaky chest, dirty head, and the dark beak. The woodland kingfisher doesn't have any dark on the head, and he's got a lower black mandible. What on earth has frightened these francolins, I wonder? I'm just going to go back and have a look. The francolins have just been given a fright of their lives. The francolins that we saw. Not going to be any off-road driving, folks, but Franklin have got startled, but they've stopped shouting. Okay, we're going to carry on around the corner, maybe do a little bit more birding this morning.
Well, while Steve does birding, we've also been trying to do a spot of birding. We've got two fairly rare birds. I mean, we've had them recently, but they're not birds we see commonly. There's two lesser moorhens that were here, which is the first time I've seen two or a pair together. Most of the time it's just the one in this area. All the other previous sightings I've had is just one bird, but there is definitely two. I'm just trying to find them again. They flew into that flooded sort of grassy banky section there, and they are ducking now. I can't actually pick up their heads anymore. Just now I had the head of one kind of poking out, but at the moment I don't see them at all. Unfortunately, our leopard tracking has turned into an absolute nightmare, because literally I cannot go anywhere without another elephant showing up. And we almost got squashed by two big bulls that were fighting. They came charging around the corner and had to put on brakes very quickly and came skidding to the halt straight in front of us. So I can't imagine what it must have been like for a leopard in this area. That leopard must be out of here and thought to itself, I'm not actually dealing with this anymore. It's also two different leopards. The tracks that we found coming down the road versus the tracks that I found going up the road are not the same individual. The tracks coming down are much, much smaller than the ones coming up the road. So I'll try and keep just checking the area, but I'm running out of roads now. The block that they look like they've gone into is a very, very large block. One that is incredibly difficult to find anything in. The next road to the south will be the cut line, but it's a long way away. So the chances are pretty slim, if they have gone into this block, that we'll pick them up. Just trying to use my binos to see if I can't pick up where these birds have gone. No, they've disappeared in that vegetation. There's definitely two of them, though. Very exciting to know that there's a pair here. I wonder if they'll breed. That'll be pretty cool. Alright, well, I'll sit here for a little bit longer, see if we can't get visual. In the meantime, hopefully our leopard pops out while we're here as well.
Bail, don't bail. Yes, and we are. So, just to show you folks, the original road was here. And look how much erosion has taken place, where water would have found the path of least resistance. The runoff from the mountains, obviously a huge accumulation of water would have descended down the mountains, and then the water would have found the path of least resistance, which would have been this road. And I mean, look how deep that is. That's a lot of sediment that has been moved through this area and obviously further west. If you can look in front of us, Craig can give you a understanding. There is a lot of runoff that has moved sediment here. This would have been heavy erosion. You would have light erosion taking place, which is called sheet erosion. And obviously we have management tools in place to minimize that. But erosion like this, we would use something called a gabion, which is like a metal-filled cage full of rocks, and you would place this straight at a 90-degree angle to stop the sediment right here. But water area, and this is just the start of it, folks. What we're going to be doing is just finding our way out of this, because I don't want to go further here, because it looks like it gets even worse. What we're going to be doing is just going a bit further west, and then we're going to use another road to go south. And we are going to hit a junction where the runoff would have found the the most. So it's actually an old river that runs through the mountains, and then it comes off our southwestern corner over here. And what we're going to be doing is going to go taking a look at that. I'm very excited to see what it looks like. But management tools are very, very important for a reserve to minimize on things like this. Because if you think about the amount of water that fell, if there was, for example, houses down here, people could be in danger. And that's where the management of a reserve comes into vital play to make sure that you don't have this. But this was just obviously nature being nature, the amount of water that fell last night or night before. But really incredible stuff. And you can see it is still quite windy with a lot of clouds still coming in from the east. Obviously the creative aspect of nature, and the sun just starting to peek up and over that beautiful cloud formation over there. So a little bit south is where we're going to head to, and we're going to take a look at what has happened there. And from there, like I mentioned, we are going to go west, and I think we are going to go get stuck into the dunes. Kelly, this is nature at her best. Untamed. Yeah, definitely. When you have this much water coming down, there is literally nothing you can do. You can just sit tight, strap yourself in, and enjoy the ride. And then from there on, take account of what has happened from this amount of water. There's a lot of water. There's a few pans just to the east of that mountain range over there. So much water came down that the pan walls burst, and obviously all that water was released. There's another spot where we saw the African cuckoo. We were busy mulling around there. That whole area is flooded. Where all this water would go is further down south, and where we just have this uniform blanket of water, and then just the big camel thorns and larger shrubs that are sticking out at the moment. But what we're going to be doing is just reversing over here a little bit and then making our way out of this area. And then we will see you in a little bit. But we're going to send you off to Steve for a short while.
Welcome back, and we have found another bird for you, everybody. This one is indeed a spur fowl. This one is called the Swainson's spur fowl. And first of all, the male has got the spur on the back of the leg, but then also the male sits on top of termite mounds or on top of high points and makes his very loud rasping call, which is what attracted me to him. Declaring territory, you see, letting the ladies know he's around. Very easy to identify. In this area, there's only one. There you go. This is the beginning of his call. There's only one Franklin / spur fowl with a red face. There are a couple in the country, though, but geographically very well distributed. Also get the red-necked spur fowl down in the Cape. Okay, so you didn't get to hear his call very clearly, so let me play it for you. You'll listen on my hat. Very characteristic call, not easily mistaken for anything else. And again, another ground nesting bird. Very good. Well, he's moved off. Let's move on ourselves, see if we can find you another few feathered friends.
Welcome Welcome back to And Beyond Ngala. So I actually left the stretch of the riverbed where the Birmingham Lioness is because we heard some baboons alarm calling and I thought it might be worth a try. And as we're driving along further west on the Timavati River, there is a massive golden orb female and she's built her web just next to the road. And in her web, she's actually got quite a lot of young or smaller males, I should say, within that web. And this web is huge. The treetop that it's attached to is at least 5-6 meters off the ground. So she's built her web between the floor and the canopy of this tree. And it's unbelievable. So it's quite a beautiful sight to see. She is probably about maybe 10-11 centimeters across. She is one of the biggest golden orbs I've seen, and there you can see a male in the web. So the males can be hundreds of times smaller than the females. And it's amazing to see how many more golden orb spiders have popped up since the rain. There's another male there, a little bit bigger. So they really are a lot smaller than her, and they'll always be kind of on the outskirts of her web. She'll be more in the middle of it. It's unbelievable. It's actually a different species of spider there. So this web is massive, and on that one very prominent thread you can see the golden color, and that's actually where they get their name from, is their web. The prominent threads have this beautiful golden sheen in the morning light. It's incredible to see how many spiders are in this one web. And they move so easily. So these ones are quite interesting. You know, she'll use this web to catch a whole lot of insects and things, but also that patch in the middle is where she has her eggs. And once those little babies hatch, they actually disperse on their own. She has nothing to do with the baby spiders. She lets them go completely on their own. But have a look at the intricacy of that web. You can see all of the little strands coming outwards. So she would have spent a lot of time building this web. There's actually a fly flying past it there. You can see her coming down. Black widow spider, I agree. Her web is amazing. And I love your handle, by the way. That's a very cool name. Have a look at the little orange stripes that you can see on her legs. And she's got a very distinctly marked abdomen, the big ball of her body. That's her abdomen, her stomach. And she is quite a beautiful golden orb spider. You can see there she's just tapping the web every now and then with one of her feet or one of her legs. And she can feel the tiniest little vibrations in this web. Isn't that amazing? So unfortunately for these spiders, a lot of the time they build their webs between two structures, so between the tall trees, and so elephants and things that walk through. Kilo, yes, I think spiders might be one of the most patient hunters. They just sit and wait, these particular species anyway. There are other species that actively hunt as well though, so they're less patient, I suppose you could say, than these web hunters. And so these ones actually just sit and wait for something to get caught in the web. But believe me, as soon as something does, she is so fast when she moves to go and grab it, because there is still a chance that an insect might break through. You can see behind her to the right, there's actually a gap in that web. That might be where an insect actually got stuck and managed to break free. You can see what's called her pedipalps, which are the very small looking little legs on either side of her face. They're actually not true legs, so they're called pedipalps. Those are the structures that help her feed and push things into her mouth. And that's usually as well how you can tell the difference between males and females. In quite a few spider species, she's actually busy. She looks like she's got a little bit of silk coming out at the moment. But it's quite hard to tell because there's quite an intricate web there. But these poor spiders, unfortunately for them, the way that their structures are built, as I was saying earlier, they often build them between two tall trees or between like large gaps. And so what happens is those are the gaps that things like elephants and buffaloes would use to move through that space. And so a lot of the time I think these webs will get destroyed by animals walking through those gaps. And so they have to rebuild their webs fairly often, I would think. And we obviously do our best to try not drive through them because it's very energy constraining for them. Megan, they do. The males are much, much smaller, and they do look like a bit of a different species. They don't get much bigger than they are in this web. And I would estimate that a male would be about the size of a 5 Rand coin, if I can put it that way. So for those of you that don't know what a 5 Rand coin looks like, it's probably around 2.5 centimeters or an inch long. Whereas the female, and this particular female, she would take up majority of my hand, actually. She's very, very big. They've even got less striking coloration. You can see they're a little bit more red almost. And this looks like a very young one that's climbing up to the top right. But you can see they definitely look quite different to what she looks like. And they're just patiently waiting for her in this web. I will never forget following the black dam female and her 2 young cubs. At that point they must have been around 7 months old. It was just before the black dam female passed away, and she was our dominant leopard here for a very long time, but we were following her slowly through the brush in a summer safari with some guests, probably about 2 years ago now. And unfortunately I did not see the golden orb's nest, her web between 2 bushes while I was off-roading, and I drove straight through it, and she actually landed up on my face. She was literally on one half of my face, and she climbed down my body and disappeared underneath my seat while I was driving. And it took a lot of effort for me to maintain my cool in front of my guests. It was quite an experience, but she was quite big. She was probably, kind of bigger than my palm. And this one is about that big compared to my hand. So it was quite something having it on my face and then crawling down my body. And since then, I've been a lot more careful when I've been off-roading. But it was certainly quite an experience to have. I wouldn't recommend it if you're not particularly fond of spiders. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave this gorgeous golden orb web spider, and I'll send you over to some other invertebrates with Tristan.
I think we all have had a similar experience with golden orb web spiders and driving through their webs by mistake and having them land up on you somewhere. Your face is probably not the best place, but these things happen sometimes. I remember having a guest that once had one land in the car while we were following Shadow. Absolute panic, and she tried to jump out of the vehicle next to the leopard, and my tracker grabbed her before she got out. Shadow was not impressed. There was much hissing and moaning, and then she disappeared in the long grass. But that lady chose leopard over spider, which is testament to how phobic some people can be of spiders. And if you are phobic of spiders and ever planning a safari where you can go off-road, I suggest not coming in February, March, April, because the golden orb web spiders are everywhere. Anyway, other things that are everywhere at this time of the year is these elegant grasshoppers. You can see this is a little, there's just the one on that particular stalk, but there's another 2 that are further down from there. They are beautiful, beautiful, beautiful grasshoppers. They've got the most amazing colorations and markings on them, but they're a little pain. They can be quite a pest. They can get in everywhere and just damage everything. I know a lot of farmers are really not impressed with these guys. We've got so much vegetation at the moment that they welcome to be here and to eat everything. It's the only way we're going to start kind of getting things a little bit thinner than what we have after all this rain. What you find is that they sit like this on these grass stalks, and then often that will be the female that will sit, and then the male will come along, and he'll just kind of join her on the grass stalk itself, and you'll find that the two of them will then copulate. I'm trying to find the ones that are actually doing it. There's ones to the bottom right. Do you see them there, Paul? So to not where that one is, but quite far to the right, there's another set of two. You can maybe come out a little bit, and then I'll be able to show you where. I've got to now work out where exactly we are. Come closer towards the car. And then to the right there somewhere. And down in that grass should be there. I can see them with my naked eye and with my binos, but I'm struggling to pick them up on the camera. I think maybe a little bit more to the left now. Somewhere in all of that grass. You might not be able to see them, but there's a mating pair that are in there. Unfortunately, talking about pairs, I think it's just obscured a little bit for him, Paul. Maybe the angle is different and I can see them clearly, but he's going to struggle with the way that the grass is. Lots of seeded grass might be in front of them. But our lesser moorhens that we just spotted here haven't come out again. I have scanned and scanned and scanned and sat and looked, but neither of them are coming out. We'll have to just come again at some point and try and get them. They're in these kind of flooded grassy sections and hide very well. They're shy birds, so I'm not surprised we haven't gotten them. Okay, also no sign of a leopard popping out here, so we're going to carry on again. Let's see, maybe these leopards have come out since the elephant chaos. In the meantime, though, let's send you across to Steve. Well, back on to Zoom, everybody. We've got ourselves a preening mosque swallow. Very long tail streamers. Same story as all birds, though. Most birds with a preen gland at the base of the tail, accessing the oil, and go through each of the feathers. Slightly white on the chin, slightly pale on the ears. I think it's a mosque swallow. Sometimes it's hard in the light to actually see. But the red-breasted swallow, which I don't think we get in this area, is one of the confusing species. I don't think I've definitely had a red-rumped. Oh, red-breasted could actually be in this area. Okay, does it have a white chin, or is it a red chin? Apart from that, it's very, very difficult to tell. It looks rufous, doesn't it, on the chin? And blue past the eyes. Yes, it does. That is a red-breasted. Very nice. Red-breasted swallow. As with most swallows, they build very nice mud nests. The red-breasted swallow even been known to build them in natural sites such as aardvark burrows. They're very good at placing them underneath road culverts. Yes, the mosque swallow is favoured for using large cavities in trees. Still building the mud nest. So we talk about the ecology of these areas with the mud and the rain, and swallows will use the mud picked up from little mud wallows that elephants and buffalo and the like have created to create their nest. Very good. Definitely a red-breasted. You can see the the blue comes on past the ears, or past the eyes. Into African breeding migrant. Departing March, April. Equatorial Africa. And as with all swallows, their food is aerial insects. Wonderful to see them sitting still for so long. Got to service the feathers. Keep the feathers in good condition. If you do a lot of flying, and Jerome, normally in the morning or after rainfall, and then they might do another preening in the evening, and that's mainly to remove any parasites they might have generated. But there can be two periods of preening or grooming every day, and the preening or the grooming doesn't always entail preening. The preening is the application of oil to the feathers to keep them water insoluble, to keep the water off. Very important if you want to stay dry. So often you'll find birds in the early morning doing their dawn chorus and a little preening. And then again in the afternoon they'll do a little bit of grooming. Not at the nest site or the roosting site, because if they've got any parasites they're trying to remove, there's no point in doing so where you sleep. Lisa, most birds do. Cormorants don't preen because they want to stay. What's the word? Does that just landed there? Is that a red bull buffalo weaver? Just up to the right. Looks like a starling. Chasing him away. Cheeky. So cormorants, they like to swim, they like to dive. So preen oil actually makes a bird's feathers buoyant. So it doesn't pay. That looks like is that a red-winged starling? No, we don't get red-winged starlings here. So preen oil keeps birds' feathers very buoyant, prevents them from being able to submerge themselves. As you see ducks and geese, when they float on the water, they're very buoyant. But a cormorant needs to be able to dive, so they don't preen themselves. And you often find cormorants standing on the end of trees or logs or rocks to dry their feathers, because they get so soaked, it makes it quite hard to fly when they need to fly, because their feathers are completely saturated. Okay, well, I didn't get a good view of what that other starling was. It definitely looked like a starling of sorts. Decided didn't like the presence of these other birds. Bearing in mind this is a dead tree, and it's very likely that there is a cavity in there, and starlings like to nest in cavities, so that's probably where it's got a bit of a nest and get quite territorial around their babies.
Well, welcome back. We thought on our journey down south we'd just give you folks 2 minutes of silence. It's for you guys to tap in to a bit of Tswalu. for the wonderful subtle sounds of early morning. The wind moving through the trees, just giving the slight rustle sound. And also the wind moving through the grass. And then a few birds calling around us. The very prominent call that we could all hear there was from the chestnut-vented titbap, a very songful bird. And also likes mimicking other birds. It's very important just to stop and appreciate all the sounds around you. And a very important thing to open up your senses, hearing, smell and sight, and your sense of feeling. Feel the wind rushing over your skin.
Well, still no luck on our side. I've come back to where I had the last tracks. The last one is right here on my left-hand side, kind of facing in this direction here. But these two big bulls are still chasing one another, causing absolute havoc. Keep coming around the corner and there's these two massive bull ellies clashing and going crazy and chasing each other, and it's not the most comfortable thing when you've got two big musk bulls that are fighting. They're coming to blows every now and then, so I'm sure if this leopard saw that, it's also made a way out of here and decided I'm not dealing with this either. I wouldn't blame it, because quite frankly it's pretty intimidating when you've got 12 tons of elephant bearing down on you, and one of them is the bull from yesterday with the nice tusks that we had yesterday morning. He's chasing another bull that's also equally sized but smaller tusks, and the two of them are having a fine time of going at one another. They are all over the place. Sure, I don't know. Like I say, I think, if this leopard's off the road, then there's not really much we can do. The tracks are so fresh and the scent marking smells so strongly. It was here, it's just, I think with the ellies, they just couldn't be on the road anymore. And the elephants were too all over the place, and they've kind of pushed them off the roads a little bit. And they're now kind of maybe in the block, up in a tree in the block somewhere, on a mound. Difficult to know. I've done loops around the top side, definitely nothing coming out that way, and nothing that I can see heading towards the dam. So I'm going to take Tamboti Road now and then go and check our cut line and see if they haven't popped out there. If they haven't come out there, then they're just in this block somewhere. It's a very big block, and we'll just have to keep being patient. Much like yesterday, it was the same story. It's just loop round and round and round and round, and eventually you'll get this animal popping out. But it's also lots of other things to see on the way, so it's actually not that bad to have to go around in circles sometimes. Sometimes you get what you're looking for just by taking it easy and driving nice and slowly. So the one leopard track is, like I said, the last track I had there. The other leopard that came up this road, the last track I had was just on that little bump over there in front of us. From there I lost them. I don't know if he came south down this way, but that's a larger track than this one that's coming down. In fact, this one is almost like borderline between a female and a male, so maybe a young male. No elephants. Why are we so destructive at the moment? There's so much food, but yet this is what we're finding on many of the roads, is a lot of these terminalias that are being pushed down, and it's because the terminalias are an indication of a seep line. And seep lines at the moment are so wet that these ellies just pull on these trees and they're falling over. They don't actually have to do too much work to push these trees down. Also, the terminalias at the moment, a lot of them are in pod phase, so their little pods are out, which is good food for ellies, and so they pull them down in order to get that food. This road too is just one big elephant track. I don't think our leopard came this way. Just check these trees nicely as we go. There's some beautiful marula trees here that a leopard could sit in, but the problem is both of these tracks are males. As far as I can see, the one this one definitely that came this way would have been a male. And they don't really like to sit in trees. We know Tingana is not a tree cat unless he's got food. Most of the time he just likes to sit right next to the road in the long grass and wait. And then he gets up and walks on the road a bit and then lies down. And he's not a cat that likes to be up. If it was Tlalamba or any of the young boys, so like Tandi's cub, Kuchava's cub, they're more inclined to climb. Being smaller and lighter, it's much easier for them to drag their body weight up than it is for someone like Tingana or a cat like Tingana. He's so heavy and so big that it's a lot of effort, and he's also an elderly gentleman, and climbing trees is a young man's game in many ways. Just going slowly in case he's lying right next to the road. He has this little tendency to walk on the road and then just walk 2-3 meters off and lie in the long grass, and you don't even know he's there unless he pops his head up and looks in your direction. You don't see him, and sometimes that's not even a given. Sometimes he doesn't even do it. So he just kind of sits there and lets you drive right past. So you got to go nice and slow and check very carefully for him. You can see how these seeps are still flowing down the road at the moment. There's a lot of water still in the ground that needs to slowly run out. It's going to be a long time until these roads are dry again. Especially if we're expecting more rain today. Like Tessa was saying, I mean, Ngala's not far from us, slightly to the north. So if they're expecting rain, generally we are as well. But that's not to say that we both get rain. It can be quite localized in this area. You don't always get the rain arriving at the same place. Sometimes what you'll find is that it rains in Ngala and we don't get anything here, or it rains here and they don't get anything. It can be quite patchy sometimes. So 50, yeah, it can. What happens with rains is that water becomes less of a problem. And so you find that leopards' territories change because often water availability dictates where they need to be, especially in the winter months. But what also happens is when you get a lot of rain is the distribution of animals completely bombshells. So you don't have the same concentrations of game around defined water points, and that can often mean that leopards go looking further afield for food. So the boundaries can shift and change when it rains. Also, don't forget when it's rained, the territorial markings have all been lost now. So that's why you're seeing what we're seeing is these tracks on the road and lots of smell of scent marking. It's all these territorial cats just trying to reclaim their territories, and some of them will be cheeky and try and push a little bit further than they normally do in order to try and claim a little bit more in this, take the opportunity, especially if, like in the likes of Tlalamba's case, if Tandi's busy off, there's nothing here, Tandi busy kind of with her cubs somewhere else, she can steal a little bit of her territory, or Shadulu doesn't come here for a few days because she's busy trying to mark her western boundary. Tlalamba can start laying down that chemical scent, and that can often be enough to deter the other female from coming in further or back to where they used to be. They now smell this chemical scent and they're like, okay, wait, there's another leopard here, and depending on the individual, they're either going to take it as a challenge, or they're going to be a little bit like, okay, well, now I need to be a bit more careful about what I'm doing and not move around as much in this area. So it's really fascinating to kind of see how weather changes territory sizes, where the boundaries are. It all becomes a kind of different situation when it dries out and when it's wet. But essentially the core parts of their territories will all remain the same. It's the fringes that either shrink or expand depending on how capable the leopard has been in terms of scent marking and getting its scent out there after the rains. It is starting to get hot now, so I'm hoping this cat, or these cats, the two different individuals, wherever they've gone, they might have just found somewhere and just sit on a mound or a tree that'll allow us to spot them above this long grass. That's what I'm kind of hoping, especially because a lot of these areas, the grass is still very, very wet and slushy. And we know that cats are not huge fans of lying in wet damp grass. They prefer to be up on something. So a termite mound really does make for a great position, and so does a tree. It's crazy to think we've got tracks for 3 different leopards in this area this morning. There's tracks for Tlalamba, and then I would imagine it's Tingana. Maybe it's Mulawati and Tingana, I don't know. Or it could be, I know Inflangula was coming south yesterday. But this is a little far south for him, so I don't think it's him. All right, so let's just keep trying. We'll keep bumbling around in these circles and hopefully eventually pick up another fresher track. In the meantime, let's send you across to Tess.
So I'm along the stretch of the Timbavati riverbed, where we are coming down to check again if that Birmingham lioness has come out with her little cubs. And there is a massive elephant across the riverbank, actually. And you can just see him there. He's got very, very big tusks. Well, he seems to be hiding them at the moment. But he's along the riverbank, and he is kind of moving from tree to tree and stretching up to try and get fruits off of the trees. And it's so peaceful here. He is a very big elephant. Actually spotted him completely out of luck. And it's amazing how once he's moved, you actually can't see him anymore. But what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to keep going down into the river here, onto the little bank where we saw the lioness this morning. And we actually saw her from a distance. She was lying just next to the water's edge. And then she got up and moved back towards the new den site. So I'm really, really, really hoping that now that it's a little bit warmer, that those cubs will be a little bit more active. And maybe she might bring them out. She actually, from where she was lying, where we can see her tracks of where she was lying in the riverbed, the cubs were actually in the riverbed with her in the open. So we're hoping that that's some of the luck that we get this morning. But definitely agreeing with Tristan on the state of the wet roads at the moment. It is quite wet here. So much so that we are struggling on some of the roads, and so we're actually not driving on some of the roads here at Beyond Ngala. But I think it's going to take at least a week before everything normalizes here, before the roads are opened, and also before we can actually even chance off-roading. At the moment, we're not going to be off-roading at all. But we're very, very lucky that this Birmingham lioness has chosen to keep her den site along the riverbank, so we can still see her from the riverbed. Hopefully she is actually out though, so that we can see her. But it's an absolutely stunning, stunning area to be in. It's also a really good place to look for her tracks, because tracks in the riverbed like this, especially along this wetter section here on the right, it's still quite muddy, so tracks stick incredibly well. And there's a lot of tracks of her up and down, and we see them every day. So we know that she is definitely still here. And I think seeing her this morning was just a really good confirmation in my mind. Yes, she has moved them to a little bit of a safer spot, but not too far away, luckily for us. So I am going to head over. The den site is just in my front left here, along this tree line. I'm going to head there and drive through slowly. Hopefully we get to see her a little bit. But I'll send you over to Tshwalu in the meantime.
Look at this, folks. I don't even need to say much. So taking a look at how much water has come down. This was on the night of the 26th. And look how much water is still moving through. It makes me think, or makes me feel like I am in the Mara. I just want to see a croc's head, utilizing the current, but absolutely beautiful to be able to see water flowing in this volume in the Kalahari. This is quite a strong flow through here. So this is the runoff from the mountains where this water will be moving through these channels. Obviously, water would find the path of least resistance. And this old river is definitely an area where this water would follow and divert through. Absolutely incredible. How lucky are we to see this? Obviously, safety number one, you want to make sure you're never ever too close to the bank, and you want to make sure that you make sure that safety is on your side all the time. Look how fast it is flowing, a lot of water coming down here. And I bet you yesterday morning this was very mighty. If Craig goes to the other side of the bank, you can see how much debris, how much vegetation has been uprooted, especially quite large camel thorns. And then as well as the debris that's been exposed, the bedrock, so to say, has been exposed from the amount of water that came through here yesterday. And this obviously would be an area that you would cross through, and you would never ever want to misjudge this and go through this. So when it comes to guiding, you never want to cross through something like this if you don't know what you are doing. Safety is number one, always. And you can see the strength that this river is coming through here. If you knew the area, obviously you'd wade through first, making sure the current isn't too strong. You would wade through first just to check the depth, and then once you know it is safe to do so, then you would take the vehicle through. And obviously having the correct knowledge on how to operate a vehicle through stuff like this is very important as well, to keep you and obviously people safe. But what a treat it is to see water flowing like this. And this is all heading down south, where I said this area is totally flooded. So this water basically subsides and almost floods out into an area where there's a lot of water sitting at the moment. I'm just lost for words. Becky, would hippos and elephants migrate towards the river? So historically, very, very, very back in the day, there were hippos north of us, but shifting sand would have cut the lifeline off from that river, and then obviously the hippos would have died. We are very far from the nearest hippo, so it's a very, very long shot that a hippo would stride its way up here, and this would not be here for very long. This will be maybe here for another 3 days maybe, and then it would shrivel down into a little stream that would cut through this mighty cutting. And then elephants, unfortunately elephants are restricted in their movement, so are hippos. South Africa's got a very strong agricultural background, and if you look at their migratory routes, they are cut off from most of the country and continent. So no, they wouldn't come here, unfortunately. I would absolutely love to see elephants play or walk through this now. That would just be that would just be too incredible. But unfortunately not, no. We would not get elephants and hippos migrating to this beautiful little river, flowing stream. But But we're going to leave this beautiful scene and we are going to head off west and see what we can scratch up for you folks. But for now, we're going to send you off to Tristan.
It really is crazy when you see those semi-arid areas of the western side of South Africa with rivers flowing and beautiful greenery that transforms that landscape into the most amazing place. So I'm sure Carl must be really happy to see it like that. It's something special to be able to witness that area looking that way. As you can see, we've got a bronze-winged courser. These guys normally are nocturnal, so I'm surprised he's out given how sunny and kind of warm it is this morning. It's just gone around the bush there. I'll go forward a little bit and we should be able to get it nicely, because they're not going to leave the road too much, these guys. They're pretty happy to stay on the road, particularly with the grass being as long as it is. Don't run too far. I just want to get to a place where we can see. Oh, of course, now you fly. All right, well, it's flown away. Like I say, nocturnal birds, generally you see them at night, but they like these kind of roads, and this road particularly, I'm sure that bird is thinking, what is going on? I don't think anyone has driven this road in ages. There's not even a sign of a vehicle track anywhere near it. And it's the nearest road that I can get to complete the block for where these cats could be, but it's a very large block. This area here could house multiple cats and we wouldn't even know about it. There's lots of beautiful little termite mounds in this block as well. Nice big marulas, good places for a cat just to rest and take it easy after the chaos of trying to needle through ellies. And they definitely were in amongst those ellies at one point, both cats, because if you look, the tracks were being stood on by the ellies, and then they were on top of the ellies, then stood on by the ellies again, so they were kind of in and out of those big grey beasts, and they managed to sort of get their way through. And I think, like I say, now they might just have looked for somewhere just to settle down. It's also getting hot enough for them to do so. Just checking very carefully all the mounds, all the trees in case. I think that they are somewhere still around. I just gonna have to try and be patient and just keep sort of doing these loops, and eventually we should pick up on some sign of them hopefully coming out. If not, well, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. It's, time of the year. Can't get any sign of them, then we can't get any sign of them. It's something that does happen when it's wet like this, without being able to off-road. The ability to always find animals is not there, and you just got to make peace with that. All right, sorry, I just had a branch in my tire that I just wanted to get rid of quickly, which is done. Aaron, you and me both. The lesser moorhens are rare for us here. It's not a common bird at all. We don't see them much. I think this year was the first time we got them on camera. I might stand to be corrected, but they're not a lot of them, and so they're quite rare. I expect us to get an odd crake, so maybe African crake. Lucky if we get a corn crake, they will be around, but very hard to see corn crakes. They typically only get flushed and you get brief visual of them, and then they land and you can kind of get them like that. Not an easy bird to get good visuals on. So they might be around. Like I say, spotted crake has been seen in the Sabi Sands recently, so that'll be nice. The frigate bird was seen yesterday at Singita and the western sector of the Sabi Sands. So it could be around. Green sandpipers, they would be a nice one. You never know what kind of little plovers can arrive. I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see kitlets plover. They like wet kind of areas and a bit of flowing water, so maybe they make an appearance. What else? All kinds of things. Caspian plover, potentially, could also be in the area. Capped wheat ears sometimes come in when we get these storms. So a lot of different birds that we could look forward to that are not our norms. I've been really looking hard. Every time I see a bird fly or move, there's a cuckoo, Deidre cuckoo, I think it is. Don't fly, Deidre cuckoo. Just want to double check it's a Diedrich and not a Classes. No, definitely a Diedrich. Female. She's got that copper back. Very pretty bird that's just flown away now, unfortunately. They don't sit around long. Oh, another one. Now what? Don't start your nonsense. You look like you already want to start trouble with me. I wonder if he can smell the musk bull, because this is where we almost got trampled the first time. The second time was just up from here, but I think he can smell those musk bulls, and he's a bit concerned about being in the area, because that's a much younger, smaller bull, that if those big guys come along, they're going to chase him everywhere. I don't know where those two went. The last time I saw them, they were running away from this area at high speed past us. I think that they are long gone. That elephant is also gone as well. Like I said, I think the smell of must is just everywhere here. It absolutely stinks of bull elephant. And very, very strong, very pungent. So I think he's also picked it up and thought, I don't know if I really want to be in this area and be chased around by the big boys. And probably rightly so, given his size. He's not going to compete with those two. That's certain. All right, so I'm going to carry on here. Let's try one more time to see if we can't see this leopard coming out somewhere. Maybe we get lucky and it's back on the road again.
Tristan definitely sounds like he's having an adventure this morning with those elephants. That smell of must is quite a spicy smell. So I can imagine how he must be feeling surrounded by that smell. So what I am doing here at Anbianangala, I checked that den site. We couldn't see any of the lions, so I'd rather leave and go back a little bit later. And so you can see everyone starting to look for the shade. We've got a whole lot of impalas and wildebeest here getting ready to relax for the day, because all of a sudden it has gotten incredibly hot. So what we're actually wanting to do is we're going to go across the Timbavati River, and I want to go check if there's anything happening at Clara Dam in the east of Anbianangala, because it seems like everyone's all of a sudden feeling the heat. But actually going back to that smell of must, come on little ones. This is like the little nursery in front of me, and then the wildebeest on the left. Going back to that smell of must, it's actually a smell similar to the wild dogs for me. It's a smell that I know Sebastian loves, but I also quite enjoy it. It's like a mix of sweat and spice or something. I don't know. It's weird. But you just know you're associating it with an elephant. It's actually still very wet here this morning from the dew. We had a lot of dew last night. So everything is still very, very wet. Including the Natal Spurfiles and Crested Franklins. Oh my goodness. I would actually love to see some of those elephants that Tristan's had this morning. So hopefully I find a nice big elephant bull in the road somewhere as well. But I'm looking forward to crossing the Timbavati River again. It's always a lot of fun being able to drive through water. Not something we get to do very often. But I'm definitely looking forward to that now.
Welcome back, everybody. Well, I had a really nice big elephant bull a moment ago, giving us a bit of a hard time. He was just saying, hey, don't come too close. And he damaged a bit of a branch, and we're now going to show you what tree he was feeding on. I'm being very delicate with my attempt to pluck off the leaves of this tree over here, and I'll show you why. The branch that we've accessed is on the bonnet now, and a beautiful, beautiful tree known as the Ziziphus mucronata, also known as the buffalo thorn, known as in Afrikaans the blinkblaar waggebikkie. So the leaves are very shiny. Blinkblad means shiny. Blinkblad, shiny leaves. And Wachabiki is because of these unbelievably nasty thorns. Can you see them? We've got a straight thorn and a hooked thorn. And when you're driving along, it catches you and you wait a minute. So that's what Wachabiki means. You wait. Shiny leaves wait. Okay, so this is a very important tree, and we're going to actually dissect this tree quite deliberately now. I'm going to break it down into some medicinal properties. Monday this week we were locked inside, so I wasn't able to break down medicinal plants. So I've decided today to go from A to B, the buffalo thorn. The Ziziphus mucronata, you can see very easy to identify this tree with the red. The thorns are red on the new. The old thorns, they lose their coloration, but you still get one straight and one hooked. And the leaves are very easy to identify. You have a look at them there. It's shiny. It tapers to the end. It's a simple leaf, and there are 3 characteristic veins in the middle. And you see that, 3 veins from the base. But now, bearing in mind that you get old leaves and new leaves, this is a brand new leaf, and this is an old leaf. Not the best example, but the color difference is quite profound. Very edible. Like that, they taste just like spinach. Beautiful. I actually like to eat them all the time. So animals browse on these, elephants, kudu, giraffe. And the thorns are designed to slow down the feeding. You can't have a giraffe coming with the tongue and just stripping the leaves off because it slows down because of those thorns. It's a very well eaten plant. And the seeds can be roasted down for coffee. I can't find any on this tree, but the one at camp has got some seeds, so maybe we'll be able to find some seeds in a little while. But a very, very important tree I've spoken about this before, but I think this tree really brings together sort of cultural sort of ties. And if we go back very, very long in human evolution in Africa, and this plant, this tree, for example, was taken, and these branches like this were laid down on the graves of the dead. That's probably to prevent hyenas from getting in and digging up someone you've just buried, which obviously wouldn't be ideal. You bury someone who come back and he's been re-excavated. It wouldn't be ideal. So it probably started off as a very old custom of let's cover the graves with something that nothing can get into. And slowly over time, the plant became a very traditional and very cultural tree for many African tribes. And it links all the way back to Christianity, which, if you give me a moment to explain, we'll get back to. But in the Shangaan culture, as well as the Zulu culture, they always believe that to look at the straight thorn is to look forward to the future, to look at what is to come. But at the same time, the hooked thorn is to remember to look behind you, to the ancestors and to what has come before you. So you're always honoring the future and honoring the past, which I think is a very, very beautiful tradition. And because this tree was put on grave sites, it's probably held that traditional belief in many, many cultures around Africa for a long time, in that some people actually believe that this plant was used to capture the spirit of one's fallen comrades. So, for example, if Theo was in Johannesburg and he actually lives here and he died for whatever reason, we could go there to where his body died and bring a branch like this from here, take it with me on the taxi, go to where Theo's body has fallen and take this with the hook to hook his spirit and to bring it with, and I'll book a taxi or a bus or a car, whatever it might be, all the way back here, and then lay this on the gravesite of the body as well, so that not only does the body return, the spirit does as well. So lots and lots of traditional beliefs behind that, and how these traditional beliefs come about, it's very hard to say because they've been very long standing. But now, how do we interpret this into Christianity? Now, many of you have seen pictures of Jesus on the cross. Many of you have seen some sort of videos or images or portraits of it. And on the cross, the crown of thorns around Jesus's head had thorns that looked exactly like that, straight and hooked. If you don't believe me, go and have a look. And this is called Ziziphus mucronata. This is the tree that's been moving around Africa for a long time. And maybe it moved with human evolution and with human transference from the north down again. But the tree and the branch that was made into the crown of thorns around Jesus' head is called Ziziphus spinochristo. And it's the same design, the hook and the straight thorn. So I find that very, very, very interesting. So it just goes to show how humanity's connected, how many, many beliefs transcend all sorts of things, and how, end of the day, they bring us all back together anyway. And we can talk about that in a plant, which I think is quite fascinating. So the Ziziphus spinocristo, or the Ziziphus mucronata, genetically, they're probably very similar, but taxonomically, someone has just changed the name slightly because of the way it flowers, the way it fruits. And that could be a reason, or how maybe this plant moved with humans down, pilgrims from north down south, and the plant got planted with them. And somehow it's transcended into sort of Zulu and Shangaan cultures as well, which I find very interesting. And many of those cultures actually came from the north back down again. Did they bring the plant with them? We don't know. It's very possible. Anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to carry on, and we're going to find a nice shady spot where we're going to start dissecting this plant up into little bits and pieces, and then make some liquids and some extracts for you so that we can show you the beautiful medicinal properties of this plant. Because not only does it hold spiritual and cultural value, it's got lots of medicine as well, not just beautiful spinach for eating. It's one of my favorite plants to eat out here this time of year. We'll just leave it on the bonnet there. It keeps us nice and camouflaged. Jacqueline, it is an incredibly multifunctional bush. Wait until you see or hear all the other benefits. Normally I do a medicinal segment on a Monday. It's Thursday. I hope you don't mind if we do a medicinal Thursday. It's going to happen anyway, so. And then I'll do another one on Monday. I'll try to do one every Monday for the next coming weeks. Obviously, Mondays, sometimes things get in the way, but we will try. We will try and do it. So let's go find ourselves a nice shady spot, and we're going to set up and have some time in the coolness. While we do so, let's send you over to Tess over in Igala. See what she's found for you.
Definitely sounds like Steve's enjoying dissecting that plant there. So I can already tell just from this crossing alone that there's a lot less water in the Timbavati River. But it is absolutely beautiful. And just listen to that sound as well. So I'm sitting now on the cement crossing. And there's a little rock face on my right, and the water's coming down at quite a pace. Such an unusual sound for us to hear here at and Beyond Ngala. Beautiful. Definitely something we're not so used to. Everyone wants to drive through the water to say that they've driven through the Timbavati River. Sounds a little bit silly, but it's something very special. I think when you're so used to not having water, actually having it for a change is quite a shock. Oh my goodness. I'm quite excited to see what's around Clara Dam. I think with it heating up, hopefully, well, I'm really hoping for elephants actually. Last, yes, I also can't get over all the water. It's amazing. And it's actually so cool to hear as well that Tswalu's also got like a flowing river and water. This is amazing. We've had a lot of rain. Really, we don't know how the wet season's going to go. And we've had so many droughts recently that to have so much rain in one wet season, that the river is actually consistently flowing, and not just in a little stream, but an actual river is insane. And it's been flowing for 3 days now? It's amazing. This shows you how much water actually is in there, how much rain fell, because I think there's still a lot more coming from upriver. I'd actually love that flowing river in Tswalu. But speaking of, I'm going to send you over there in the meantime while I go and see what is at Clara Dam.
Well, Tess, I couldn't agree with you more. Looking at a river that's flowing like that with so much power is such a beautiful thing, and something that I have not had the luxury of seeing while here on Tswalu. And to be able to share that is really, really incredible. So just looking in front of us, you can see we don't have a lot of freestanding water a lot. We got to this section and Craig looked at me and we had this thought instantaneously of like, maybe we should take you folks through this as well. So looking at the water that's fallen, the great question was asked is that would elephants migrate through this area because of the water? So historically, yes, elephants would have migrated hundreds and thousands of kilometers through the country and the continent in search of rains, but due to a little bit of human encroachment, unfortunately, that stopped those migratory routes. So elephants would have migrated right through Tswalu, going into the other parts of southern Africa. But really, really amazing to see the water that is here at the moment. So what we're going to do is we're going to take you folks through this. It is quite a stretch, making sure that we have got our angle correctly. We can see from the right and left hand side that somebody has gone through here already and the vehicle is not here. So pretty sure sign that we would make it through. So making sure that we've got the correct gear, making sure that we tell everybody that we're going to be going through this little section because the vehicle might just bob left and right depending on the ruts that's been created there already. But what you want to do is select the correct gear, and you want to make sure that you got your speed going steady, because if you get to an area where it gets a bit deeper, you don't want to stall the vehicle, because if you stall the vehicle, that means you'll damage the motor and you'll damage parts of the vehicle that you don't want to do. So starting the vehicle correct gear, and then we just keep it steady, and then fingers crossed. So something like this I would do, I would even do this first gear. It's quite flat, I can see the terrain as well. The terrain isn't undulated, so I'll keep it steady in first gear, find the rut. We don't want to displace soil. People always think that they need to gun it through areas like this. And if they do that, you're displacing so much stuff, so much sediment. And think about the little organisms that are using this body of water right now. We want to ensure even their safety. And feel, just let the vehicle find its way. Oh, amazing. You can see why I've become a guide. I'm literally like a grown kid. Well, we are going to continue further west. It is absolutely beautiful. Look how tall the grass is over here. I mean, everything is really thriving to the max right now because of this life-giving rain that we've received. You can see a little bit more water in front of us. And it is such a beautiful thing. It almost gives us like a boost of energy, you know? Water is life, and that's why we have to preserve and also just be conscious about how we manage and how we use water, you know, every day. Washing dishes, washing the car, you know, brushing your teeth, make sure the tap is off, don't leave it running. I mean, it is an invaluable resource, and just remember that there's a large portion of the human population that doesn't have access to free and running water. They have to walk more than 15-20 minutes to carry water, just drinking water. Just think about how lucky you are just going to the tap and then turning it. We are very lucky. All right, once again, exactly the same principle. We want to keep the vehicle in the line and make sure that we don't do too much damage. can hear the vehicle lost a bit of power. You just give a little bit more. You don't over throttle it because we don't want to turn the tires into this muddy substratum. We don't want to create damage. This is very muddy stuff here. Oh, there we go. And wonderful. So this is where we're going to start entering the undulating parts of Tswalu. And, there's an ostrich. Oh, there's a baby ostrich. Oh, there's a baby ostrich on the right. Oh. So male and female, and then a young just to the right of the female running in front of her. Oh my word, look at that. How amazing. There's the male on the left. You can see from his dark plumage. And he is slightly bigger than the female as well. It's a real treat seeing a young ostrich because just think about the predation aspect that these birds have to go through. One making it to maturity is quite an achievement. Jackal, caracal, you name it, African wildcat will take these little things out when they are at the young stages. Even with the relentless protection from mom and dad, they can become very, very aggressive around the young. And if you ever find a nest site, if you ever find young, don't approach that area. Just be very, very careful because that animal can hurt you. It's got a massive toenail in the front of its foot. And what they'll do is they'll actually lash out their foot like that, and that toenail would be used as a very, very dangerous weapon. But what a treat. Wow. Oh my word. Okay, what else are we going to find? Also brilliant now for tracking, obviously with the rain that's fallen. It's made this clean slate. So it's wiped all the old tracks away, and everything that is there now, it's been within the past couple of hours. It's a little bit. Just go past that. Alright, and then west we go. The wind coming very steadily from behind us. It's a strong easterly wind that we have today blowing. Jerome, how long will the baby ostrich stay with mom and dad? Jerome, honestly, I do not know of the exact age that young individual with mom. I would be totally lying to you if I told you, and I just don't do that. It's just not in my nature. I would have to say, if I had to give a guesstimation, maybe another 2 months, 3 months, until it's fairly large. This beginning section, they grow very, very quickly. And then just being with mom and dad in close proximity, they provide quite a lot of protection. I will just look up and I'll just give you a better understanding or a better figure on how long that individual will be with its parents, because that is then clarifying and fine-tuning my information, which is very, very important. That's why guides always encourage guests to ask questions. That's you are basically enriching and allowing the guide to develop themselves from your understandings or your wants of this beautiful and diverse area. So Jerome, I'll get back to you shortly in this drive. I'll get back to you on that. What has Craig spotted? Oh my word, that is a big animal. There is a massive eland here. Oh. Wow. There's another one on the right, on the left. That is a very, very big eland. You got this cap over here, Craig? It is like a bus. You can see that big hanging piece of skin over there, the dewlap. Wow, look at that. You can just see from its sheer size that this is a bull. Also the thickness of the horns. Look at all the birds following that large mammal as well. It's all those wattled starlings. in close proximity. When that eland walks, obviously its large body mass, it creates quite a lot of disturbance, and birds will utilize these insects that now have been disturbed from this animal's movements. Wow. Very large. So 2 bulls, you'll find them in bachelor herds. But yeah, these are 2 big male eland. E-L-A-N-D, eland. The size of that thing's shoulders, even their neck is ginormous. LP, these guys get very large. The bulls can be weighing anywhere from 8 to 800 kilograms to about a ton. I've read accounts of elands tipping the scales at about 1,000 kilograms. Generally, you're looking at about 800 odd, 900 odd. They are very, very large hoofed ungulates. And these males really, from their sheer size, their visual appearance, you can see that that animal is large. Look at its muscles on its hindquarters and its shoulders. Wow. Nice bit of hair there between the eyes. We call that the fringe. Very, very developed in males, along with those very thick horns. Females in the species will also have horns, but they'll be a lot thinner and a lot longer in length. And hopefully we can get in the next few days that very large herd, or herds out west that I said that are numbering at about 200-300 in a herd. They form massive gregarious herds. Historically, they would have migrated through the country in their thousands. Well, a little bit more than that, actually. So that dewlap, that hanging flap of skin there that you folks would have seen underneath the animal's throat, that is referred to as the dewlap. And that is very, very prominently displayed on males. Females will have a dewlap, but it's very small, almost inconspicuous, so to say. Wow, it's a beautiful scene. If Craig can just give us a pan here to the left, I'm just going to duck my head. And you see the beautiful silver cluster leaves blowing in the wind. It is just a very, very beautiful scene. Izzy, these are the largest antelope species there that is on the African continent, is the eland. They outweigh that of a buffalo. So in terms of hoofed ungulates, they are the largest that we have in South Africa and in Africa. The sun really starting to warm things up now as we meander out west. Very beautiful trees. These trees really enjoy dune crests or drainage lines in order to grow. And their beautiful silver sheen, you can see, is very distinctive, especially now how the wind is pushing and displacing the leaves. As you can see, it's got this silvery, light white tinge to the tree. Absolutely magnificent tree. It's not nice through the flowering period. It gives a very stinky smell. It's normally early summer flowering, and they produce little white flowers, but at the very, very heavy stench. It almost smells like wet old socks. And that's to attract nocturnal animals or creatures, moths and bats, to come and pollinate their beautiful flowers. But a very prominent sight on these dunes going out west. We're going to continue on west for a little while, and we'll see you guys when you get back this side.
So welcome back to And Beyond Ngala. I've actually just had to stop and give the vehicle a quick once over with a branch to try and get rid of one of the spider webs. It was like a web was attached to the front of the car. Oh my goodness. It's one thing after the rain. Spiders become a lot more active. So I can feel the heat now. It must be at least 5 degrees Celsius hotter than what it was 2 years ago. It has all of a sudden started cooking out here. So I went past Clara Dam, nothing there. But what I am doing is I'm actually going towards the big clearings in the east to see what might be there. There's a bit more shade, so I'm hoping some animals will be around there. So we've actually got quite a lot of what we call sea plants here, and you'll kind of like notice them on the roads every now and then, where the road is still wet and looks like it's flowing, but everything around it is completely dry. And it's amazing. It's just areas where the soil holds the water a little bit better, and so it's still flowing kind of just below the surface layer, and that's why we see it on the road, but not actually around the road. Absolutely incredible. There is a lot of very fresh elephant dung here. And a lot of flies. So I think there might be some elephants here somewhere. And more spider webs. I feel like I've got flies all over my face. Oh, let's hope there's some elephants at this clearing.
Right, we're enjoying some beautiful starlings here, wattled starlings. And looks like the one on the right hand side has got a big caterpillar. Collecting food at a very, very prominent rate. They're starting to nest on Tswalu. First time in my garden career on Tswalu that I've seen them nest over here. And that's due to all the rain that we have received, that these birds have decided to bunker down here on Tswalu. So there's a great question asked earlier about how long would an ostrich stay with the parents. So I would say anywhere up to about 18 months. They reach sexual maturity at about 2-3. So I would say at about, females like to stay in those groups. And I think males would maybe branch off at about 18 odd months. But I'll definitely look up once back at home, and I'll make sure that I have some defining and correct information to send over. You can see the land starting to dip and then it raises. That's where we'll start hitting the first dune that will be heading out west. And it's nice just to... Charlie, do ostriches seek shelter in the rain? No. If there is a little bit of cover, they would bunker down next to a bush. But just sitting down, tucking their legs in, and just remaining still, that's mainly what I've seen ostrich do through the rainy periods. I've never heard about an ostrich going under a bush to seek shelter. Tucking next to a bush, more than likely, but then just sitting down and keeping its position would be a way on how it would get through that rainy period. A lovely road to find fresh tracks on as well. So just keeping a very careful eye for any cheetah tracks. This is a very favorable area for cheetah. You can see the fairly open landscape, although that a cheetah can hunt in thick bush. In my personal career, I've seen cheetah hunt in the thickest of bush, where you'd think only a leopard would be able to capture prey. A cheetah is a very very versatile animal when it comes to habitats. But the Kalahari is a very, very suitable habitat for that lovely animal. Incredible. Feels like my eyes want to pop out of my head. It's so green right now. And what I'm hoping to find for you guys out here as well is a quail. There's a common quail that's calling at the moment, the harlequin quail. Common quail, curricane, and then the curricane, button quail, the harlequin quail, and the common quail. And these roads being very wide, if they cross the road, we can catch a little glimpse of that lovely bird. And I think that will be a new one for the list for lots of people. The squawking sound of the northern black koran. There's the rays of our first dune that we're going to go up and over. There's Mr. Oryx. Good morning. There comes the noisy northern black koran. Oh, let me just go forward here for you, Craig. Let me just roll forward. Sounds like he needs a bit of oil. Craig, what a champion. It's very hard to get birds in flight because their flight can sometimes be so erratic. I think he's dealing with a bit of a headwind there. You can see the flight pattern being very distinctive. If you watch birds enough, you can actually recognize birds by their flight pattern. And you can see he's giving quite a shallow beat. His wings aren't going far back. It's basically straight down and he's thrusting straight back up. And then we can hear his distinctive squawking. So it could be for us that he's being so noisy right now. Such a beautiful bird. See the white panels at the end of the wings as well. Very distinctive. Yo, well done, Craig. Yo, beautiful. Against the background, it looks like he's going very fast, but he's literally going nowhere slowly with the very strong headwind that he's dealing with. Yo, well done, Craig. Nicely done. It's always beautiful to see birds in flight, especially if you can catch them like that, like vultures. Watching vultures fly is always such a beautiful thing. 130 days for a vulture to fledge. So a question was asked about a vulture and when it would get to a carcass and start feeding. I would say anywhere after 130 days where that bird would fledge. I'm sure that if an available carcass was close by, that bird would start utilizing that available food source. We're going to send you off for a short while and we'll see you guys back this side.
Welcome back, everybody, to Thursday and Medicinals, where I am bleeding and I got thorns everywhere. This is not something to try at home, boys and girls. Buffalo thorn is a dangerous, dangerous plant. I'm quite hot and bothered after that. But anyway, we have broken the plant down into a few magical little ingredients. Let me just put that bark in the front over there. Okay, so I've got some water boiling. So what we're going to do is we've got some leaves over here. I've collected a whole lot of leaves. Beautiful, shiny, shiny leaves. I've managed to get a part of the plant. We found another one that's got lots of flowers on it. Can you see all the beautiful flowers? How beautiful are they? I've harvested an enormous amount of bark, and that has come at quite an expense, I'll be honest with you. And then also some of the seeds. So it's not often you get to see all of these at the same time. And in and around camp, we've got them flowering and fruiting. And it's probably due to the fact that there's more moisture down there, and maybe also there's no animals eating them. But I've got a couple of pots on the go. And what we're going to do first of all is, when we ever talk about medicinal plants, everybody, is there's lots of elements to medicinal plants. Now, the buffalo thorn, as with many other medicinal plants we find out in nature, in South Africa alone, 27 million users of these plants. But disclaimer before we start, if you do suffer from some chronic illness and you have some prescription medication from your doctor, please don't go and say Steve said otherwise. Stick with your medication and stick with what it is your doctor has suggested. But these are traditional beliefs and medicines that have been passed down by generations and are still used very, very commonly in the communities of South Africa, and particularly around the Kruger National Park. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of the bark. I've harvested the bark from a branch that elephant broke. So I haven't been unsustainable. Harvesting is always very, very important. If you're going to harvest plants, leaves are very sustainable. Fruits are very sustainable. Flowers are quite sustainable as well. Bark, less sustainable because you end up killing the tree. And roots are very unsustainable. So I leave roots alone altogether unless I find a tree elephants pushed over. But I find a lot of the time bark and roots are interchangeable. So I'll discuss the roots element to this plant at the same time as the bark. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to make a decoction out of this bark. And the decoction means boiling water for a period of time. I'm just going to throw this bark in there. Get it in there nicely. I've got a thorn in my finger. And just give a bit of a stir. And we're going to turn it up. Ow. Now, don't try this at home, boys and girls. There is flames. Be very careful with fire. Okay, so I'm just going to put that on there. That's going to need to boil for about 8 to 10 minutes to really get the active ingredient out there. But looking at the fruits here, these fruits will go bright red at some point, which shows that they're edible. And they can actually be roasted to make coffee. But now, you see how this is all seed. It's quite bitter. Excuse me. Look how it's basically flesh. So most of the fruits and seeds and vegetables and fruits specifically we eat today have got very little seed. We've sort of manufactured them in a way that there's more fruit than seed. Whereas historically, fruits are actually a lot of the time mainly seed and very little fruit. Hence is the case here. So once these are ripe and red, they're eaten by a wide variety of animals. Kudu, vervet monkeys, baboons, us as well. And you can actually just take them when they dry like that and just rub them like this, and that skin comes off almost like a raisin. Comes off and you can just pop it in your mouth. But be careful not to eat the seed inside. It's very, very hard. But obviously then that goes through the digestive tracts of an animal, goes off somewhere and gets distributed through the poo. Let me just double check. Okay, so a bark, we're going to do an infusion and a decoction. Now my infusion, I've already started boiling this water. So what is an infusion? An infusion is just leaves steeped in some water. So I'm just going to steep some of those in there and see what happens. A few more. Oh. Now there's a tree that's loved by many insects and organisms, and I just found on one of my leaves some eggs, which I'm going to go and put back on the tree. And you see those eggs there? Some caterpillar of some sort. Some caterpillar of sorts. So there's quite a few butterflies and caterpillars that will actually lay their eggs on very specific trees, and then we call them larval food. They'll either pick that plant for its pollinating effect or for the fact that they want their larvae, meaning the caterpillars, to feed on that once they hatch. So I know the striped policeman is a big fan of the buffalo thorn, and I'm going to go put those eggs back on a buffalo thorn when I go back. But here we've got the flowers. Before the flowers, let me have a look at this. Once again, the Ziziphus forward and backward. And the Shangaan cultures as well, I mean the Zulu cultures as well, one of their culture beliefs is that this tree actually defends them against lightning. So if there's lightning around, they will take a branch of this, attach it to themselves, and ward off lightning. There we go. I feel like Harry Potter now with my little hat. Okay, be careful not to poke myself. I've got holes in my hands everywhere. But once again, the flowers, which we can see quite clearly over here, are pollinated by a wide variety of organisms. And then obviously that's very, very important ecologically for food. But these flowers, I don't know exactly how, but they've been utilized as a fish poison. So probably branches like this taken and thrown into a small little pond, and it probably has some effect on the lungs of the fish. It causes them to come to the surface, and you can harvest them that way. But by no means is that the most sustainable way of fishing, but it has been used in the past for that. And there is quite a sticky sap that comes out of the plant when you cut the bark. I was getting quite a bit of my fingers there when I was cutting, and the tree sap has been used with the diamyphid beetle, was used by the sand bushmen or sand people when they came to putting poison on their arrows. The tree sap was quite sticky, and they take the diamyphid beetle, which is basically the larvae of a very poisonous beetle, and they'll squeeze it. So out little drops will come, and they'll put it onto the arrowheads with the bark or the sap of this tree, and it helps to stay on the arrow before they go hunting, and it lasts a little bit longer. So I can see that this is boiling quite nicely. Oh, it's getting very hot. That's what happens when you boil things, doesn't it? Okay, so let's let this boil down a little bit. We'll start seeing some lovely colors coming out of the bark. Already I can see some colors generating out there. Beautiful. Beautiful. So we'll allow that to boil down a bit so we can get the active ingredients out. Allow my leaves to stew a little bit more, and then we'll come back and talk about the properties, the medicinal properties that this plant has been used for. There's a very wide variety of cure-all sort of properties throughout the African continent, but we're just going to have to wait a little bit for this to break down before we do so. Okay, so while we allow it to break down, we'll send you over to Tess and Ngala.
So speaking of interesting plant uses, Sebastian has adapted me a special fly swatter out of a magic worry. It works very well. Basically, you wave it in front of your face so that the flies don't land on your face. And it works incredibly well, it really does. But it's also multifunctional. I use it to move spiders off the front of my car and clear spider webs. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to cross back south of the Timbavati River, because we have heard that the Birmingham Pride is around our eastern boundary here at and Beyond Ngala. And so I'm hoping that with it being nice and hot, they're going to have moved into the property towards a quarry, a water hole, which is just off of our eastern boundary. I love driving through water. It never gets old. But it is incredible to see today how many insects are out, how many frogs, how many birds. Everything has just sprung to life overnight. We're seeing a lot more spiders as well, a lot of dung beetles, which we haven't seen in a long time. And kind of just everything looks like it's just had a fresh burst of energy. So I'm just changing out of my low range from the river. But it has been a very, very interesting morning with how it's progressed. We are expecting rain at around lunchtime. And we started off with quite a cloud bank having built up, and now it's completely burnt off. And I think it's going to start building up again just now as it gets hotter and hotter. But you can see how wet it still is. So if we get more rain, that's going to kind of postpone off-roading and how long the roads are going to take to dry. So we've just got to hope that it gets enough rain that the animals and nature are happy and that we deal with it. But after this morning, my vehicle definitely needs a very good bath. There's a lot of grass seeds all over us, a lot of mud, a lot of water, and a lot of spiders. So I'm actually pretty good with spiders from a distance. Yeah, I really appreciate how beautiful they are. I don't really like them when they're on me. I think that's one of my limits. It's a little terrapin in the road. So I'm going to keep going towards the eastern boundary and hope that the Birmingham Pride is on its way in to Ambionangala, and I'll send you over to Tswalu in the meantime.
Well, we're testing Craig's skill with birds in flight today. We have got a black-chested snake eagle in flight here. It looks like it is actively hunting. When we first spotted this bird, it was meandering very, very, very slowly across the landscape in front of us. You can see how it's circling now again, and then using the headwind just to slow things down, but still also to create lift for this bird to move forward. Lovely, that big white open chest. You can see very distinctive. The illustration in the book isn't the greatest, but you can see over here, black-chested snake eagle. It actually looks like a brown snake eagle, but you can see the distinctive white underparts, belly, and as well as the start of the chest, and you can see that dark ring starting around the breast section. Black-chested snake eagle, what a beautiful bird to see. Predominantly hunts and eats snakes, but also go for lizards and small rodents every now and then if it can get to it. But mainly its diet consists of snakes, believe it or not. And what a lovely bird to see. So what we're going to do is start up and head off further west here and see maybe if it's landed on these larger trees. This westerly section is where we find quite a lot of these black-chested snake eagles. And there's also a lot of falcon activity out here as well. Oh, how do you distinguish between a male and a female? Well, sexes are alike in this species, but if you are lucky enough to see a male and female together, you would find that in the majority of raptors, the female is the larger of the two, because she has to sit at the nest site and protect, obviously, what is inside. Come on, you want to land on the road, you want to land on the road, you want to land on the road. I am making you land on the road. Come onto the road. Beautiful little grey-backed sparrowlark busy calling above us over here. Okay, he's not going to land on the road. Okay. So with eagles, you'd find that the male would be the smaller of the two and female would be the larger. But sexing them like that, it's not very easy from my knowledge. You'd have to see the male and female sitting next to each other or near the nest to have size as a distinguishing factor. Wow, look at this, folks. Craig, can you give us a bit of a landscape there, please? Look how incredible this is, folks. A sea of green at the moment. And obviously the vastness of Tswalu just speaks for itself. So I was busy telling Craig now, the amount of water that we've received through this rainy season, I'm expecting this winter to be very, very cold. With all the water that's sitting and that is locked in the ground, I think this winter we are going to get very, very low temperatures. So I'm going to make sure that this winter I've got double undies on and triple socks. Because I'm not a fan of the cold. I come from the coast, and I'm a summer baby, so I like it when it's hot. There's a lovely oryx there in the middle for us, Craig, busy grazing away. You can just see from its coloration from this distance and its shoulder height that it is an oryx. And look how small that animal is within this vast landscape. It's at about 200 plus kilogram animal there. It's more than likely a bull because it's by itself. So that is a very hefty and large animal, but it looks like a dinky toy. We're going to send you over to Tristan for some elephant activity.
Well, more elephants. There are literally elephants everywhere. It's impossible to drive a road at the moment without bumping into them. Up on this section, so our tracking mission has completely been obliterated by these guys, which means I'm going to take the hint and just spend some time with them. Clearly they don't want us to spend time with the spotted cats this morning, so we'll rather spend time with them and take some time to enjoy them. This is quite a lot of them have already passed, but it's quite a nice sized herd. This cow that you're seeing in the road, she's one we recognize. She's here quite a lot. You'll see her left tusk is very, very short, but it also grows backwards slightly. It doesn't grow like her right tusk. It's got a slight sort of back turn to it. I'm also going to keep quiet and just want you to listen. Hopefully you can pick it up. There's a Verreaux's eagle owl also calling from one of these trees here, which I'm going to try to find now. I don't know if you can pick it up. It's like a very low hooting sound. Sounds like it's in one of these marulas close by to us here. But they're quite tricky to spot if they're sitting in an odd place. Also, we can't get too close to some of these marulas. It's going to be a long distance view if we do find them. I like Verreaux's eagle owls. They're a seriously impressive sized owl. 1, 2, those little pink eyelids add a little bit of glam to an otherwise quite drab coloured feathers. And they're pretty efficient hunters. Now, if you hear them calling like this and where we are, this is not great habitat for them. You typically don't find them in these crest areas on marulas. They're normally in drainage lines. So it might be that this one's got a kill. Often if you find them here, it's from during the night. They've made a kill of some sort and they're still sitting on it, or they've just finished it and then they fly to their sort of roost spot for the day. And that's, like I say, normally a drainage line, very thick, where they can hide out. Funnily enough, they are actually predated upon by various different things. The other day we found, in December, we found an area where one of them was killed. What's wrong? What happened? Something gave them a massive fright. Can't be a bull. These are all cows that I see here, and I don't see a bull coming down the road. What's wrong, girl? What have you picked up? The reaction was like that of a bull ellie that's chasing them, not so much a predator. Wonder what that was. It was so weird. She's been standing there for ages. We've been here for a good 10 minutes. And she's been just sitting, and all of a sudden she's just started to run. Maybe this cow is bullying her a little bit, I don't know. Very strange. Animals. Sand bath next to us. I always like when they do this. They end up getting all this vegetation kind of stuck on them. And only as they walk does it slowly slip off. Sometimes they even get it on top of their heads. It can last for quite a while on top there.
Alright, we're going past this. I want to just try to see if I can get a view of this owl. Our signal here can be a bit funny sometimes, so I do apologize if it breaks up a little bit. Just get forward to see these two marulas here. This sounds like marulas on my right hand side. It's definitely not this one that's closest to us. Is that over there? Let's have a look quickly. No, I can't see it anywhere here. I'm gonna have a quick scan and just see if I can find it. In the meantime though, let's send you across to Steve.
Get on. Welcome back, everyone. Well, I think we have done enough boiling. But now the purpose of the decoction is to extract the plant extract. So you essentially need 2/3 water, 1/3 product. And by boiling it down, you're extracting those hard to get bits and pieces. But I realized that before you went away, I actually needed to add some bark to the infusion. It was actually a bark infusion, but now it's become a leaf and bark infusion. But that's okay. We'll still get around to it. So I'm going to pour some of my liquid out now and have a look at how the color has changed from pure water. You might not be able to see it very clearly, but we're going to allow that to cool down. That is the decoction. And I'm going to extract some of it for the color so that we can see. It's always nice to sort of have a look at how that coloration has changed versus pure water. Okay, so there's the decoction. And here is the infusion on this side. I'm just going to pull it straight out of there. So infusion is like making a tea. It's not the same amount of active ingredients pulled out. There's definitely ingredients that are being pulled out, but it's nowhere near as deep and as hardcore. And there's different reasons for that. Okay, so I'm going to pour a little bit of that into another cup. I've left my sieve at home. I was making cacao chocolate yesterday, so my sieve is elsewhere. Apologies for that. Okay, so we're going to allow this to cool down a little bit because it's very hot before we drink it. Just add a little bit of cold water so that it's drinkable. Okay, very good. Okay, so the seeds over here as well are very well used locally, not just edible as a fruit, but the seed inside, as I said, is very hard. They can be ground down to make a porridge and even be made into flour for cooking. So very, very useful. And the size of them, you can imagine you'd have to get quite a few of them, but definitely very available. And obviously the tree has served many, many purposes in the past. Now the leaves over here, I spoke about the leaves. Now the leaves are very edible, very tasty as a spinach, and they're actually eating the leaves on their own as a known aphrodisiac. So just eat a few, why not? And we don't have the time this morning, but just so that I didn't forget, I put some bark and leaves over here because bark and leaves over time dried, made into a powder, can be inhaled as a snuff for any sort of chest and sort of nasal cavity complaints. So the tree itself is a very, very, very good all-round cure-all. And the marulas are falling. And here's just a piece of the wood that I chopped off of the tree. Well, off the elephant, but made it nice and straight. Carved off all of the wood there, all the bark. Beautiful, beautiful wood. It's pretty hard, and larger pieces of them have been used for fence posts and for other tool-like implements. You could make something quite solid. Obviously, you'd want to try find something nice and straight, but pretty decent hardwood that elephants will often feed on for the bark. I'm going to talk about that now. So we've got the infusion, the root infusion. Now, the root infusion itself, well, we've put bark together, but we're actually looking for roots when we're looking at many medicinal plants, medicinal properties. And the infusion has been looked at many things, taken orally for female fertility. It's been applied and utilized when ladies have menorrhagia, which is basically bleeding between menstruation, or it's also given to ladies if they're having very, very painful body cramps or painful menstruation. So very, very nice to know that there are medicines in the bush that are able to assist in many of the day-to-day monthly cycles that our sisters go through. And then when we look at the decoction itself, the decoction's got many beliefs. Definitely for wounds, the decoction itself we can drink, but the bark itself that comes out of here, we can apply. This bark that's now been broken down, and it's very hot. Of course, it's very hot. Now that's been broken down and the ingredient itself has been activated. So nice and soft, and you'll be able to apply that directly to a wound. It's useful for infections and also for all sorts of body complaints when you ingest it. So diarrhea, which is quite a good one whenever you're feeling a little bit ill and maybe the body's not processing things that you'd like to as well as you'd like to. So here we go. I'm not feeling any illness today, but I feel like a bit of body conditioning would be quite helpful. It's actually quite pleasant. Theo, I'm not sure if you'd like to try some. Theo, are you going to try some? Are you scared? Theo looks like he's scared, everybody. It's actually a little bit bitter, as all medicines will be, rather bitter. But it's definitely drinkable. A little bit of honey, and I think that will go a long way. So you can clearly see the difference between the decoction and the infusion, and you get different plant particles out of the vegetation by doing so. Now just double check I haven't missed anything. So also for the decoction from the root, you can apply that itself, these bits, to a snake bite area, to a wound where a snake has bitten you. Obviously you'd ideally like to have this prepared and ready. You can't go and say, hang on, snake bite, I've got 8 to 10 minutes to boil the stuff up first. So having the stuff on hand is obviously quite helpful, as obviously making the porridge and the powder, all of those things, they come and go. There's a seasonality to behind how hunter-gatherers would have been moving about, harvesting the vegetation from the wilderness. And I find it quite incredible how many different types of medicine one can generate from the wilderness. And so the infusion, here we go. This is for all the female infertility issues that I have at the moment. It smells a little bit better. It's quite pleasant. It's actually very soft, very light. There's not much flavor to it all. It's not nearly as bitter as the decoction, and those are the two different elements of it. So definitely good to look at nature, good to look at some of these plants, and I like having to bring many of these applications to you all in the public. As I said, there are 27 million users in South Africa alone as of 2013 that use medicinal plants harvested from the wilderness to heal themselves. And my thesis looked at, bless you Theo, looked at growing medicinal plants commercially on a low sort of budget scale so as we can use them for harvesting, because many plants are harvested from the wilderness unsustainably, whereby the plant itself is killed or damaged to a point where it's not sustainable and populations are decreasing. So we're seeing decline in many areas of South Africa of species. Species are being removed, and natural areas are places where they are being protected. So it's very important to come about socially uplifting people, understanding that there are strategies of harvesting plants that are sustainable. Let's train people so that we can harvest bark in a certain way that the tree will grow back. Let's harvest in a way that if we are harvesting roots, we're benefiting the tree at the same time, because obviously we don't want to lead to species loss, but we still want to promote the social sort of ecological development of medicine in this country. So I hope you've enjoyed the buffalo thorn, the Ziziphus mucronata, with the wonderful benefits that it brings to the human health. Wonderful colours. You see those clearly, Theo? Very good. Off we go. Okay. So I'm going to pack up and distribute all of my things back to where they came from, making sure to put my eggs back on the tree they came from. In the meantime, I send you over to Tristan.
Oh, more elephants, as if we didn't have enough of them. This is now a new road and a new bunch. These are all bulls that we've got here, bar one cow, who's been, I think, separated by 3 bulls and is not exactly enjoying her life right now. Is a particularly large elephant that's with her. So this guy that we're having a look at right now, he's a big boy. He's following the one cow around who's got a youngster, and then she's being followed by another bull towards the back. So it's being kind of harassed is probably the best word.
I was hoping she was going to come forward a little bit further so you could see the size difference between him and her. Look at how much she towers over him. It must be really difficult for these cows when they're having to mate. I mean, that is a seriously big animal, and they've got to actually support that body weight some of the time, and it's why you find elephants mate in water a lot, particularly small young cows. They just find it much more comfortable, much easier to be able to breed in water itself. Like I say, the size difference between them is huge. I was hoping he would come a little bit closer so you could actually get a real sense of scale between the two of them. But you can see the top of her forehead is about the height of his eyes. Hello, girl. Are you coming to say hello? The little calf underneath there as well. Look at those little trunks. I've seen this quite often with female elephants when they are being harassed a little bit by the bulls. Often you'll find that they'll actually move towards where you are. So they sometimes come to the point that you're standing at or sitting at, as if to almost sort of check if you're not another one of these males. And if not, then they kind of move off. But often very, very close. I'm surprised the big bull hasn't followed her. Often in these situations when there's a cow that has been separated from a herd and it's just the males that are around her, it's because she's in estrus. Yeah, she's talking. And that means that the bulls are quite sort of, what's the word, persistent and pushy, and they hassle her, and stay right with her. I mean, we see it in most animals. But this bull doesn't seem to be too phased. Maybe he's having a bit of a nap. Maybe it's been a long night competing with all the other males. This morning we must have seen easily 20 bull elephants in the space of about, I would say, a hectare. So, about 2 acres. 20 bull ellies, it's a lot in the small space, and they're all jostling for position and pushing each other around, and lots of vocalizing and displays of power. So, I thought I heard something. The displays of power, so you're seeing a lot of them pushing over trees for no reason, not even feeding on them, they're just hammering them over, and it's all to try and intimidate opponents and impress females. It works, I can tell you that much. It is intimidating when one of these guys runs up to a tree and just kind of breaks it to its roots and then stands over it with its ears out. There's a certain level of impressiveness about that. So try roll forward, see if we can get a better view of this bull. He should be fine. He's just trying to see if he is in must. Yes, he is. Starting the car seems to have triggered him to start walking after the cow. She's disappearing slowly. That is a big elephant, though. Whew. I'm glad we're on the uphill slope and not the downhill slope. They tend to bound down hills like that. Sometimes it almost looks uncontrollably so. Isn't it amazing, though, how quickly they disappear? Yeah, it's a big animal. That's 6 tons of meat that just goes behind a bush and it's gone. You'll see the smaller of the 2 bulls is now coming. Oh, he's stopped. He's decided to stop where that large bull was standing. I think it's because he's dribbling urine there. He's in must, this bull. So if he's dribbling urine, often younger bulls will stop and just sniff it and try and work out what's going on and who this bull is and whether or not they're a threat, or how dominant they actually are over them. There's a lot of subtle chemical signatures within that urine that dribbles, and these guys will be able to decode that and work out whether or not it's a potential animal that they can challenge. But I suspect in this case there's no ways. The size difference is just too big. Lisa, yes, most definitely elephant bulls will injure each other. You'll find that if they really get seriously fighting, they can even kill each other. It's been recorded many times where elephant bulls have killed one another. Particularly these big old bulls that have big tusks, they often succumb to younger bulls that are in like their 30s. Those bulls are able to kind of be a little bit more sharper and faster and can really injure those older bulls, which is sad. So it can even lead to death. I mean, this morning, those two bulls that were fighting was no joke. There was trees being smashed. They were clashing each other. The one got pushed through a little grove of terminalias, and it looked like a bomb had gone off. There was just broken trees everywhere and kind of footprints where the ground had been sort of scuffed, and these bulls were really hammering each other. And it was that bull with the big tusks was dominating another one, and he was just being very aggressive about it. It wasn't like playful games. I mean, he was full chasing that bull, and if he caught him, he was hitting him with his tusks quite hard. There was a lot of aggression in those two bulls this morning. So it can get quite out of hand, and like I say, it can even result in death. You can imagine those tusks, with the power that these guys have and the weight behind them, if they push into another elephant with enough force, it just pierces straight through, and they can puncture lungs and hearts and internal organs and cause a serious amount of damage. They're not to be played around with, and bulls that fight can get really serious. Sometimes the force is so strong that these guys will hit each other, and when they clash, it's enough force just to pop those tusks straight off. You'll find that the tusk actually breaks completely. All right, I'm going to just carry on down the road. We'll follow these guys for a little bit, see what they get up to. Hopefully one of our cats will pop out at some stage, but we'll just sit with the Ellies for now.
Welcome back to And Beyond Ngala. So I am at the waterhole that is just off of our eastern boundary. And it's quite a beautiful view to see all the water in it. So the last time I was here, it was actually completely dry. How crazy is that? So there's a little pair of Egyptian geese that are standing on the edge, but other than that, I don't actually see any lions. But what I'm doing is I'm using this chance to just listen as well, in case we can hear any signs of the lions, like them contact calling or even other animals alarming. Can definitely hear the flies. There's a lot fewer birds calling now than there were this morning, and that's definitely got to do with the heat. It is a lot hotter, and so the birds might be off in the shade. I can still hear a black-crowned chagra though, somewhere in the distance. And doves, there's always doves calling. So this has eroded quite a bit from the rain, and naturally there already was some erosion, but there's a lot more erosion now. You can see that the grooves in that bank are quite a lot deeper. This is a really good spot for the lions to come and cool down if there's water and there's shade along the banks. I haven't heard any sign of the lions yet. But I'm definitely going to go and have a look on the boundary itself. Maybe they might be on their way over the boundary onto the And Beyond Ngala side. And what a beautiful place to have a little stop and listen to the sounds.
Still with our Ellies, they're still milling about, doing their thing. There's a little bit of interaction with them. Isn't that cute, with the one grabbing the other one's tusk? You'll also see there's a drongo flying around that's hawking insects. So there's a lot going on with these guys. There's nice bits of interaction between the bull and the cows as well. So we'll just sit with them and see. The only problem is that they've got the only shade, and the sun is brutal this morning. It's baking hot already. It feels like it's got that kind of searing heat to it today, which it hasn't. I suppose yesterday afternoon it had it, but the kind of days previous wasn't as bad as this. But warm today and humid with all the moisture that's on the ground. It's conditions like this often lead to more rain when you get this high humidity with hot sun. If we get a bit of a breeze blowing, we'll know, especially if it's like a little berg wind. So if it's a warm wind, that often is an indicator of more rain coming. And I saw that there was actually another cyclone developing, so hopefully that doesn't come though. We've had enough now. I know it sounds like, we're being sort of choosy about things, but, there is sometimes such a thing as too much rain. It makes life very difficult for us and for the animals when it really constantly rains as much as what it has already. And if you add another amount of rain like we've just had, you're going to end up with a big problem. The reserve will become almost undrivable in many ways. So hopefully we don't get that. A little bit of rain here and there is okay, but none of this 250, 300 millimeters of rain in 3-4 days story. We don't need any more of that. The drought is well and truly over, and the grass is recovered, and so have the trees. And so we can just take it easy now from a rain point of view. Whoever did the rain dances for this year can hold off now. They've done enough dancing, and we've had enough rain. But you can see these guys just feeding under the trees as it's gotten hot. I think that's part of why we saw them move just now, is that it's getting so warm that they're trying to find places where they can feed and rest while being in the shade. As soon as they get into the sun, they move quite quickly. Whereas now they found themselves in a beautiful little shady tree with marulas, although this marula looks like a male. It doesn't have any fruit on it that I can see. But they've got little round-leaf teaks, they've got bush willows, they've got grass. So it's 3 of the kind of favorite things that they like to eat. An elephant loves a round-leaf teak. I don't know why, but they do. They absolutely hammer the stuff, and it's why most of the round-leaf teak you see here is stunted completely. It's not nearly the size that it should be. Most round-leaf teaks, if there's no elephants around, can get much, much larger than what we see here. Just going to keep quiet for a bit. The sound of them tearing grass is so nice. If the bull's going to come past after these guys come past us, and you can see the size difference as he comes down the hill. Oh boy. It is not a small bull eddy by any stretch of the imagination. Dwarfs us, that's for sure. Another one that's very distinctive to tell from others is his right ear is quite tatty. You can see lots of holes in it, a nice big U shape. Where there's a tear, there's always good ways to be able to ID ellies. Tusk size is not generally something you use that often because the tusks can be worn, they can be broken. So it's normally ears first, and then the tusks with the ears and any defining kind of marking that's on them. Sometimes, like, there's a bull elephant up at Pridelands called Kumo. He's got this little kind of scar on his nose, so you can use that. But mostly it's ears that you're going to be using for ellies in order to ID them. Now, most of the elephants that we see here, we don't recognize all that often because we have so many that pass through. I mean, there could be easily, 4,000 or 5,000 different elephants that roll through this area. There's a few individuals that we kind of have earmarked because we know them, and there's definitely individuals within the herds that we recognize. So like that female we had a little bit earlier with that tusk that's slightly different. So if they've got those kinds of things, much easier to tell them apart. But there's a lot of cows out here that look very similar, as well as bulls, particularly the young bulls. And you only have to kind of take notice of very prominent markings, and then eventually you can sort of start to work out who's who. But it's such a big task, and you'll never really remember 4,000 Ellies or 5,000 Ellies. It's going to be near impossible to memorize all of them, on top of all the other things that needs to go into the old noggin when you're out here. Paul, you're asking about their skin being so wrinkly. Well, their skin's wrinkly because it increases surface area. So those little furrow, if it was tight skin, you wouldn't have nearly as much skin, which means that it helps with temperature control a lot of the time. The more surface area you've got, the more you can cool down by using water, or the more that heat can be radiated off of it. So that's basically why they have wrinkly skin. They don't have hair to protect them and kind of insulate them, so wrinkly skin just helps to increase surface area. Spray that with water, evaporation takes place, it's cooling the skin much faster that way. Alright, let's get out of the sun, because we're going to get third-degree burns if we carry on sitting in it like this. I'm pretty sure my skin is not going to be thankful for being a guide at all. My skin and my eyes, I'm going to be half blind and probably have all kinds of skin issues, but anyway, will that be worth it? Alright, our Ellies are starting to disappear a little bit further off the road, so I think I'm going to leave them. In the meantime, let's send you across to Tswalu and see how they're getting on.
Well, an absolute eruption of noise around us from these wonderful wattled starlings. And it's just a cascade of noise. We're in a breeding site of these birds. You can just hear from the continuous chattering and the amount of it that there is so many. We also spotted a bird in the distance. Okay, can you just go slightly off of it? No, go in a bit more.
It was fully in.
Oh, was it? Okay, there we go. Got a beautiful raptor sitting out here as well. So the sound made us stop initially. And then in the distance we spotted this raptor. You can see it's a raptor from its size and its distinctive hook-like beak. There's a way away. It's a very large bird. I can see feathers all the way down to the feet. So definitely an eagle. True eagles have feathers all the way down to their feet. You to turn your head this way, buddy. It's actually sitting on a wattled starling nest. And now with this available rain, this is when we have a burst in resources. And would have other types of raptors moving into this area that won't normally be here. As myself and Craig spoke about this afternoon's plan of action, and I think we're going to go out west to try and find those beautiful red-footed falcons. But this over here, its general colour, its size is fairly large, and its general shape. And also with that sear, I would have to go for tawny eagle. That tawny colour, sear being a yellow, very heavy beak, bull. its sheer size, I would go for tawny eagle. We don't see them here all the time, but they do fluctuate into this region when the resources are available. Yep, I would definitely go for tawny eagle. Beautiful looking raptor, something that we don't see often, just like I said. So seeing these very large birds, it's always such a treat. The sounds are incredible. I sat here in the vehicle for a couple of minutes and just closed my eyes and just allowed my hearing to reach as far as possible. And I mean, it is just continuous. As you would say, it's a cacophony of sound. They make these beautiful, messy, stick-like nests in these trees, and these camel thorns providing the perfect nest site for them. Such a treat. So once again, this tawny eagle, if you're looking at that question that was asked earlier about the black-chested snake eagle, once again, sexes in this species of raptor are alike. You'd find that female would be larger as well than that of the male. So she needs to sit on that nest and protect the very important items, which would be the eggs and then later the chicks. So her size would be a very big factor in how she would deter a potential threat. But this individual is just scanning for available prey and finding that nest a perfect platform. Tracy, so from my very brief exposure to these birds, around these nest sites you have this continuous chattering. You can see that there's no birds actively mocking that raptor. So it's giving me an understanding that they're not really bothered about this bird. They would go after a bit larger prey items. And these birds are big, but they are not really suitable for a chase. And they are very agile in comparison to this bird. This bird is large and very, very it wouldn't be a very agile raptor. So to catch a bird like a starling would be a task. I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it wouldn't be a bird suited for that type of pursuing behavior. Something like a falcon is perfectly suited to take off and catch these birds. But this tawny eagle would go after eggs and nestlings. So if it could find a site here, it would then obviously tap into available food source that is of abundance right now. But then they also go after things like hares. I've seen them go after things like herons as well, come down and actually swoop down at herons. And then big animals, prey, even young antelope, young impala, they'd go after young impala as well, young warthog. So not a raptor to be taken lightly, but they're not too bothered right now. Reptiles, fish, frogs, lizards. There's no birds actively mobbing this individual, so they're not really bothered by it. we're going to leave this beautiful bird, but we're going to send you over to Steve in Djuma.
Back, everybody. Theo tried some of my medicinal decoction and he hasn't died yet. Theo, you're right. You're alive. I haven't died yet either, so it's all good. Oh, we had a turtle dove that was going to drink. It has now moved off. An impala in the distance. The little pan that the turtle dove was at did not exist last year. Did not exist. There was a little bit of a wetland forming here due to the runoff of water, but it did not exist. Now there's a pan, and we talk about the formation of pans, talk about the formation and creation of the muddy areas, and then it all links back to different types of nesting and how the swallows, as well as many of the wasp species, will actually gather this mud to make their nests. You're right there. Well, he might be dying, actually. He sounds like the decoction is finally catching up with him. So that is just a little muddy wallow that has formed probably due to a couple of tracks and accumulation of water. And now the water's holding there again because we're at the bottom of the landscape where the clay soil accumulates. And so that is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Eventually we'll have quite a sizable pan over there. Natural processes, everybody. And you'll only really notice these pans developing in times of high rainfall. Beautiful time of year. Impala's feeding, and some lovely cloud formation. Let's listen to the birds chirping. Oh, there over my right shoulder, we have a kudu emerging. Let me move forward, and we might be able to get her better. Oh, she's going to run. Sorry, my dear. Off she goes. There's always more than one when you see a kudu. Maybe she was the last of the family. I'll have to think about something for Theo's allergies. Did you know you're allergic to grass there? You did. Did you bring medication with you? He was hoping I was going to sort him out. I'll have to figure out something. I asked him the other day, do you think you'd still sneeze if I cut your nose off? It's a good question, isn't it? He was sneezing profoundly the other day. Very loud sneezes. Very loud sneezes. And that kudu family's gone. We didn't cut his nose off, everybody. I thought that would be a little bit taking it too far. I've heard the term cut your nose off to spite your face. We wouldn't do that, I promise. So see, even look here, this is exactly what I'm talking about. There's elephant dung, and right here, an elephant has just been sort of digging slightly in the mud, and that is how these pans form. Elephants are obviously looking for the mud to cover their bodies. Sometimes they might even be eating the soil to gain minerals from the ground. And so slowly but surely over time, the erosion due to the fact that animals are wallowing in there, birds are building their nests, wasps are building their nests, carrying away the sediment, they get bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay, and on we go. Check our southern boundary. Maggie, you want to know how elephants know where the water is? Well, they can smell it, first of all. But down here in these low-lying areas, they're not digging for water. They are digging for roots. Oh, there's an elephant. They are digging for roots, and they're digging for the mud to be able to throw it on their bodies. But in the streams and the dry riverbeds, they can smell it. They can smell water a meter below the surface. It's okay, Mr. Elephant. He is crossing to the south. He didn't like that. Here he goes. So in the dry riverbeds, they can most certainly smell water. Someone said as deep as a meter underground. But it's not the down here in these low-lying areas. It's the mud and the soil that they're definitely after. Not necessarily the water for drinking, because the water is full of sediment and very muddy and wouldn't be very tasty to drink. And elephants are very discerning when it comes to drinking. Very discerning. They like very clean water. Very, very clean water. Many of the other animals don't seem to have as much sort of concern. Jerome, we don't test how deep the dams are. There's no real need to. The dams are either full or they're not full. There's no one goes around with a measuring ruler. And if it's overflowing, then we know it's full. And as it gets lower and lower, eventually they dry up. We just keep checking them. But obviously we observe, but there's no actual measurement of how deep they are. And bearing in mind, they're constantly sedimenting up. So there's constantly nutrients and minerals and soil being pushed down the stream. So dams and watering holes invariably will silt up. It is a process, a continual process of movement of soil from upstream downstream. This is so dense and green at the moment. You notice how we can be with an elephant and then suddenly he's gone. Quite incredible to think, trying to find the little small animals in this dense bush is definitely far, far more difficult.
Well, we cannot get over this lovely sound being produced by these wattled starlings. A very, very busy nest site, which these birds have made untidy stick nests, and almost looks like a large clump there on the right-hand side of screen. Very untidy and very distinctive nest. But obviously using this continuous sound is a very distinctive way of IDing this lovely bird. And they are very busy now. Myself and Craig have been watching one site, and we've just been trying to understand how many times these birds come in and out. They are very, very busy. Yeah, so very busy individuals now. So they'll have chicks inside these nests, and the parents are driven to feed these little ones. Caterpillars, seeds, all types of little invertebrates that would make up their diet right now, especially for the chicks. Protein, when it comes to developing young, protein is a very, very strong food source, a very viable food source. And now with the influx of insects after the favorable rains, there's a lot of insect life around. You can see there's quite large pieces of a stick that have been collected. There's one on the left. He's got items in his beak. I can't really see. Such an incredible sound. Just the rate at which these individuals are going to and from the nest is just unbelievable. Oh wait, Craig, I could see the mouths. Just hold on there, folks. Do you see this gap in the tree? You can actually see the chicks' mouths come out. Do you see that big, large nest in the middle? Do you see that large clump in the middle, Craig? Just watch to the top left-hand corner, sorry. You can actually see the mouths come out. You can see the coloration of the gape or the inside of the mouth. Up a bit. Oh, I think the angle's off for you there. Let me just try and see if we can see it. Very distinctive nests. What a beautiful morning we've had on this sunrise safari. I can't thank the viewers enough for joining us. And please be sure to join us this afternoon for the sunset safari, which will be taking off. And we will be looking for more wonderful and beautiful things. Well, from all the starlings and from Tshwalu, we bid you farewell until later.